Chapter 2134. Luo Qingqian's face, which was as white as snow, instantly turned red due to the sudden obedience plus the favorability. She cleared her throat and said, "Lord Demon Emperor, according to age and seniority, it wouldn't be too much for you to call me aunt." Actually, she was thinking that it wouldn't be too much to call her mother-in-law, but she had the heart of a little fairy. The word mother-in-law made her sound too old. Little sister flower deity, the problem is that you're old enough to be my daughter. Yi Xuanji smiled gently and said, "You don't really think you're still the blazing fire god, do you?" Actually, this kind of exchange was very exciting for Yi Xuanji. He could look at the world from a different perspective, and he could speak so closely with the opponent he once respected the most. Although he knew that because of his recklessness, he had almost changed her life. He had made her fall from a person everyone respected to being trampled on by tens of thousands of people. Therefore, when he learned about this through the reincarnation mirror, he agreed to the Plenaloon's request almost without hesitation. Half of his divine power was important, but losing his only opponent in this world was even more regretful. However, he originally thought that the blazing fire god was as cold as frost, but now that he truly interacted with her, he discovered that there was a touch of cuteness in her indifferent temperament. "Be daughter?" Luo Qingqian smiled coldly and said, "Don't tell me you're here to make fun of me." In the next second, just as Yi Xuanji was about to say something to refute, his originally gentle voice instantly turned cold as he roared in her ear, "Careful to the left." In the blink of an eye, Luo Qingqian narrowed her cold eyes and leaped to the side, dodging an arrow glowing with blue light. Just now, she really didn't notice that someone was nearby. She didn't even feel that the other party had already attacked in her direction. Sure enough, her divine power was too low. Even if she had a divine artifact from her own space, it wasn't enough for her to sense an immortal of a higher rank than her in this plane. What kind of skill is a sneak attack? She sneered and raised her right hand. The power of the exquisite ring directly attacked in the direction of the enemy. In an instant, a blue figure appeared in front of her. Wind Immortal. Without another word, Luo Qingqian pulled out her phoenix dance sword. With a smile on her face, she instantly attacked in her direction. Every move was fatal, leaving no room for maneuver. In fact, if it were any other immortal, she might have shown mercy. But this Wind Immortal didn't want to do that. After all, she was Yu Bingxin's subordinate. Thinking about it, Yu Bingxin really thought too highly of herself. Even if a trifling wind immortal could occasionally catch up to her, her immortal chi really couldn't compare to the phoenix dance sword and the exquisite ring. After fighting for less than 10 rounds, her phoenix dance sword was firmly placed on her neck. The wind blew by her ear as if she was trembling. "Flower Fairy. No. Fire God, please spare my life." Luo Qingqian heard this and gave a cold laugh. She shook her head and said, "I still remember when I was being punished on the god punishment stage. You kept dancing in the wind, venting your happiness." She would forever remember the expression in the Wind Immortal's eyes when it transformed into the wind. It was an incomparably proud and joyful expression. With a crack, Luo Qingqian didn't wait for her to speak before using her phoenix dance sword to slash at her primordial spirit. Chapter 2135. The fragments of the Wind Immortal's primordial spirit were torn apart piece by piece. The sky suddenly darkened before slowly lighting up again. This was a kind of heaven's will. As long as the primordial spirit of an immortal in the heaven realm scattered, the heavenly court would fall into darkness for a second. Ha ha ha. So domineering. Although this wasn't a hard fight, because of her low immortal energy, she was still panting after a few exchanges. There were cheers that kept ringing in her ears, like Yi Xuanji had won. What was even more incredible was that Ding affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 20%. He actually added favorability points to her, although she didn't understand why he added favorability points to her. Was it because she was too handsome in the fight just now that he was infatuated with her? The system feels that the male lead should have a feeling that you are him. What? Yi Xuanji said in a strange voice. "I'm saying that your actions just now were very domineering." Luo Qingchun heard this and wanted to say something, but she felt something stuck in her throat, and she couldn't say a single word. She could only talk to the system in her mind. After all, in this barren place, other than the dissipated wind immortal's primordial spirit, there was only her here. However, there were three illusory ones. This was very terrifying, all right? System, do you mean that the favorability points he gave me were actually for himself? The system doesn't know either, but the notification is, Yi Xuanji does worship himself. Luo Qingchun's lips twitched. She felt a bit helpless, but she could understand. After all, Yi Wuji could be considered a lonely person in his field, so it was hard for him to not be a bit narcissistic. Actually, it could be seen from many aspects that there was nothing in this world that was worth him risking his life to cherish. Even if it was only half of his godly power, he could give it to her without any deep feelings, just because he felt a little guilty. To him, he didn't even care about divine energy, so what did he really care about? Yi Xuanji, do you have any dreams? Thinking of this, Luo Qingchun couldn't help asking. After all, if a person didn't have any dreams, they were no different from salted fish. Even if he was the demon lord who ruled over the myriad demons' mirror, he would still feel bored and bored after thousands of years. There used to be. Yi Xuanji thought about it and said, probably not anymore. Oh, there used to be. Why couldn't she feel it? Then what's your dream? Luo Qingchun picked up a green foxtail in the wasteland and asked while walking. I'll fight with you. Yi Xuanji answered her question almost without hesitation. It was as if this matter was the thing that he was most obsessed with in his life, and also the thing that he wanted to do the most. Then why is it gone now? Luo Qingchun pursed her lips and continued to ask. Could it be because he had taken a fancy to her beautiful face, or because he had fallen in love with her temperament that could change at any time? The system was speechless and thought. The host may be disappointed, because it was an unfair victory. Yi Xuanji answered seriously and truthfully. Your immortal power is too low right now. Fighting with you would be bullying you. You. When Luo Qingchun heard this, she suddenly felt like she couldn't catch her breath. Actually, there wasn't anything wrong with what Yi Xuanji said. It was reasonable. Chapter 21:36. What do you want to say? Yi Xuanji's lips were soft as he said in a gentle voice. Relax. I won't take advantage of this chance to bully you, and I'll protect you. You should talk after your primordial spirit awakens. Luo Qingchun gave a soft snort and walked forward with large steps. So angry. There was a feeling of anger, but she couldn't do anything. Yi Xuanji could feel that she was angry, but he didn't know why she was angry. Could it be that he said something wrong? During the afternoon trip, Luo Qingchun resisted talking to herself and didn't say a single word. Yi Xuanji couldn't feel her thoughts, so he didn't know what to say. When Luo Qingchun was roasting fish at night, he finally slowly said, I also like eating fish. For Luo Qingchun, she got angry quickly and left quickly. After all, the other side didn't have any ill intentions and was sincerely protecting her. He was just a bit honest, so she didn't care that much. If you like it, I'll roast it for you after your primordial spirit awakens. She gave a soft laugh and seriously flipped the fish on the rack. The fragrance instantly filled her nose. Ding! Affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 30%. This time, the increase in favorability was very clear. She probably said something that tugged at his heartstrings. My mother used to say that to me. His voice that entered her ears suddenly became a bit low, like he had fallen into some kind of memory. There was a touch of sadness in his endless thoughts. I've never seen your mother before. Even 2,000 years ago, when I was still a god. Luo Qingchun narrowed her eyes and said, You should only be 120 years old then. He softly replied. She died not long after I was born. Why? Because I have the power to destroy the world. Before I was born, my father knew that I would be a demon god that was hard to come by in 10 million years. He said with a self-deprecating smile, Actually, my father wasn't willing to keep me. You mean, he doesn't want to be born? Luo Qingchun frowned in confusion and guessed. Is it because he is afraid that you will threaten his position as the demon venerable? Little flower fairy, you guessed wrong this time. Yi Xuanji shook his head. He loved my mother very much. Because of the divine power in my body, I started absorbing her power when I was in my mother's womb. This kind of endless plundering emptied my mother's life. I seem to have read about this in the Heavenly Palace's library. Luo Qingqian bit her lips and said, "There's a legend about the demon god." Suddenly, she began to feel that in this world, gains and losses were always proportional. You will always have the ability that no one else in the world has, but you will also lose the motherly love that most people in the world have. This isn't a legend. It's all real. Yi Xuanji seemed to sigh as he slowly said, "In my memory, my mother was very, very thin. Even though my father taught her spells every day, she didn't last long before she left us." For a long time, the air sank into silence. Luo Qingqian suddenly realized that she really didn't know how to comfort people. She wanted to say something, but she felt that anything she said would be wrong. After an indeterminate amount of time, Yi Xuanji's extremely pleasant voice slowly sounded in her ear. "Why aren't you saying anything? Are you asleep?" She stilled and went with the flow. I'm asleep." Chapter 21:37. Hearing Yi Xuanji's soft words, she suddenly felt quite at ease. However, this demon god always had a special feeling of worship for the blazing flame god. Thinking about it, it made sense. After all, lonely people always paid more attention to their opponents. This was probably a kind of mutual appreciation between experts. At the same time, in the 33rd heaven, Di Fanyu sat on the throne with a gloomy expression. Beside him, Yu Bingxin pretended to be reserved and wiped her tears. She said with a choked voice, "Wind Immortal has always contributed diligently to the heavenly court. I didn't think that the hurricane lily immortal called Poppy would be so vicious." The immortals all looked at each other, but no one said anything. Seeing that no one spoke, Yu Bingxin continued. Not only did she steal the soul to help the demon sovereign recover his divine power, she also killed her. The heavenly court cannot tolerate such a cruel person. In the end, she was too confident. She always thought that the woman's primordial spirit would scatter after jumping onto the God punishment platform. Little did she know that after checking the life and death fate book, she discovered that she was still alive and had escaped the 33rd heaven. She was beginning to believe that the woman could really be the blazing flame god from 1,000 years ago. If she wasn't, how could she not die after jumping onto the God punishment platform? Reporting to the Heavenly Emperor, although the Hurricane Lily Immortal was wrong to steal the soul, jumping onto the God punishment platform is already her punishment. Baihua Immortal said, "Wind Immortal must have gone after her to take her life." In this kind of situation, Poppy only wanted to protect herself. Haha. Before Baihua Immortal finished speaking, Yu Bingxin coldly interrupted her. "Baihua Immortal, are you saying that the flower immortal who stole the soul doesn't need to be punished?" Baihua Immortal was stunned. She hurriedly knelt and said to Di Fanyu, "Heavenly Emperor, that's not what I meant. Don't talk about it." Di Fanyu frowned. The scene on the God punishment stage kept replaying in his mind. Her snow-white clothes were dyed red with blood. It was a shocking sight, but it also made people miss her. "Heavenly Emperor, we should send a large number of heavenly soldiers to block her path. We can't let her take the soul to the myriad demons' mirror. Otherwise," boom, Di Fanyu slammed his fist on the throne and shouted, "I told you to stop talking. Do you not understand?" Yu Bingxin's entire body trembled, intimidated by this deafening sound. She only felt that her heart was trembling and pounding nonstop. How many years had it been since he had spoken to her so loudly? Even if a new heavenly concubine came to the heavenly court, he would always show more concern for her. But now, Bai Huaxian doesn't need to participate in this matter. Di Fanyu frowned and said, "The Grand Lord will lead 10,000 heavenly soldiers to the wilderness to stop Poppy. He will definitely take back the God Spirit." "Yes, and Celestial Emperor, please give your orders. Don't hurt her. I want her alive." The Grand Lord was stunned for a moment before he cupped his hands and said, "Yes." Di Fanyu nodded and left the hall. Yu Bingxin, who was sitting beside him, wanted to say something. But before she could say anything, Yu had already left. His back looked so cold. It was as if the 1,000-year relationship between husband and wife had completely collapsed at this moment. Could it be that she was just a substitute in his heart? Chapter 21:38. The next morning, Luo Qingshun slept very soundly and dreamlessly. When she slept that night, she felt as if she was in a chaotic space. Even though she was in the dangerous wilderness, it gave her a special sense of security. "Did you sleep well?" She had just washed her face by the river when Yi Xuanji's voice sounded. "Not bad." Luo Qingshun narrowed her eyes and calculated with her fingers. According to the Plenilune Serpent speed, he should have reached the Myriad Demon's mirror by now. "You should be able to go into seclusion after you get the God Soul." The Plenilune Serpent just left. Yi Xuanji smiled. "I wanted him to stay for a cup of tea, but he directly refused. He said something very righteous, and I need to go settle 2 people down." Luo Qingshun was speechless when she heard this. She cleared her throat and said, "You already have the God Soul. Why are you still talking to me?" "I'm just worried that you'll be in danger." Yi Xuanji's brows twitched. "The Heavenly Court's people must think that the God Soul is in your hands and will definitely send people to kill you. A little flower immortal like you will probably be killed before you even reach the soul-devouring tower." "You." Luo Qingshun's lips twitched. "Don't worry. If I'm so easily killed by those shrimp soldiers, wouldn't I be letting down the title of the demon god's only opponent? I'll wait for you to reach this soul-devouring tower." Yi Xuanji's tone suddenly became very deep and carried a hint of pride. "I'm just worried about you." Actually, although she only had 30% favorable impression points, she could feel the other party's concern for her. Whether it was because he was afraid of losing his only opponent in this world, or because of other reasons. But you should know that the Heavenly Court definitely has spies in the Myriad Demon's mirror. Now that the God Soul is in your hands, they will definitely invade. Luo Qingshun pursed her lips, "But you still need time to go into seclusion." "But no buts." Luo Qingshun curled her lips. "Actually, this is also good. I'll be much safer." After all, the main goal of the Heavenly Court's people was to take back their God Souls. For a small immortal like her, there was no difference whether they killed her earlier or later, unless someone wanted her dead more than to find her soul. "All right, then I'll go into seclusion immediately. Wait for me in the soul-devouring pagoda. I'll look for you when I come out." Luo Qingshun rolled her eyes and said slowly, "Okay." In the next second, the faint red light surrounding her body began to slowly dissipate, and she suddenly had a special feeling of reluctance. Perhaps it was because she was used to Yi Xuanji's nagging these past 2 days that she suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. But without Yi Xuanji, it didn't mean that the road to the soul-devouring pagoda would become more difficult. After all, the original owner was very familiar with this road. They met the Grand Lord's group 3 days later in front of the soul-devouring pagoda. They rode the clouds to the dense fog forest before they walked to the soul-devouring pagoda. As her immortal talent still belonged to the Heavenly Court, she could not soar on the clouds and could only walk through the misty forest. At this moment, the Grand Lord was leading a group of heavenly soldiers in front of her. Logically speaking, Yu still thought highly of her. He actually used so many soldiers to chase a small flower immortal like her. Hurricane Lily immortal, if you surrender, the Heavenly Court might be lenient. The Grand Lord knocked the ground with his immortal staff, causing the surroundings to shake. He was an exalted immortal, and his immortal power was not low. Chapter 21:39. After all, if she was just a flower deity, why would he send so many people to capture her? "Sorry, I'm a stubborn person. The last thing I will do is wait to be captured." In the next second, Luo Qingshun's right hand transformed into the Phoenix Dance Sword. She smiled. "I'll play with you guys before the soul-devouring pagoda opens." In the next second, she jumped into the crowd. Every move was fatal, not leaving any room for negotiation. Actually, she could feel that he was holding back, but she didn't need to. Back then, the original owner had trusted Yu wrongly, which led to her miserable death. Now, Defon didn't want to kill her because he wanted to satisfy his own selfish desires. In the end, everything would just have to start from the beginning. Grand Supreme Lord, this flower deity's immortal power might not be much, but the power of the divine artifact glowing with golden light is too great. One of the injured heavenly soldiers said, "If we hold back, everyone will die here. But the Celestial Emperor has ordered that we must capture her alive. What should we do?" The Celestial Emperor's orders have changed. In the next second, one of the heavenly soldiers slowly walked out. She gently waved her right hand in front of her, and her white armor changed into a feathery blue brocade robe with peony and phoenix patterns. The immortals were stunned. They immediately said, "Greetings, heavenly concubine Yu. The Celestial Emperor ordered me to come here." Yu Bingxin narrowed her eyes and glared at Luo Qingchen. There's no need to stay behind for such a rebellious traitor of the celestial realm. Kill her without mercy. But Grand Supreme Lord frowned, his heart filled with fear. But before he could say anything, Yu Bingxin interrupted him. Without another word, she took out the sword at her waist and shouted, "All heavenly soldiers, listen up. Whoever takes her head will be heavily rewarded." "With just you?" Luo Qingchen's cold eyes narrowed. She looked at her fearlessly. "Yu Bingxin, even if there were 100 of you, you would still be defeated by me. I'm curious. Who gave you the courage to say such shameless words?" Logically speaking, she really couldn't be bothered to argue with this kind of female supporting character with a low IQ. But Yu Bingxin gave people the feeling that she was a god that no one could surpass, a high and mighty figure. In reality, she couldn't defeat anyone and couldn't kill anyone. That day on the God Punishment platform, I was merely careless. Today, you will know how laughable your words are. As soon as she said that, Yu Bingxin attacked her. Every move left no room for maneuver. Grand Lord stared blankly for a moment before finally deciding to attack her together with Yu Bingxin. After all, one was the heavenly concubine of the heavenly palace, while the other was a sinner who had snatched a god soul. Luo Qingchen gave a cold snort as a sinister look appeared on her face, as her ice-cold eyes filled with killing intent. After a few rounds, Luo Qingchen suddenly felt that Yu Bingxin's immortal power was indeed much higher than before on the God Punishment stage. But in just a few short days, how could she suddenly improve by leaps and bounds? Of course, Luo Qingchen wasn't the only one who saw this. Grand Supreme Lord, who was on the same side as her, also saw it. In the next second, she leaped and waved her right hand. The exquisite ring's golden light attacked Yu Bingxin's back. At this moment, a dark red light appeared on her back. God Power Pill. God Power Pill. Chapter 2140. Why? She had eaten a pill forbidden by the heavenly court so that she could kill her with her own hands. But why was it that no matter how hard she tried, it still wasn't enough? So all deities like to eat this kind of forbidden pill. She curled her lips into a smile, her eyes filled with mockery. But she was actually injured, and not lightly at that. When 10,000 heavenly soldiers used their immortal power to enter the palace at the same time, even with the exquisite ring in her hand, she could not resist. In addition, there was also Yu Bingxin who had eaten a god power pill. "Shut up," Yu Bingxin roared, looking at her with bloodshot eyes. "How can a lowly little deity like you compare to me? I am a heavenly concubine. You are just a sinner that everyone wants to beat. You know better than anyone else who I am, don't you?" Luo Qingchen stood with her hands clasped behind her back. Even though she was injured, her expression was as calm as dust. No one else could see it. Her sonorous and forceful words had completely penetrated Yu Bingxin's heart. In the original owner's parallel universe, she had only needed a quick glance to recognize her. Now, with so many eyes, she must be very clear about her identity. But she didn't want to admit it. The only thing she could do was kill her regardless of everything. She wasn't a substitute. "I want you to die." 10 dark red pills appeared in her right hand, and she swallowed them without another word. In that instant, her eyes turned dark red, as if she was a demon that had come out of the myriad demons' mirror. She glared at Ji Yunshu and attacked her again. Luo Qingqian frowned, wanting to dodge, but she didn't have the strength. The immortal power she had inherited from the original owner was too weak, and she had used up too much immortal power in the previous battle, so she was already injured. Yu Bingxin's attack wasn't fast in her eyes, but she couldn't dodge. Damn it! In the blink of an eye, the sword pierced through her arm, and fresh blood dripped down one drop at a time. Heavenly concubine, you have mercy, the Grand Monarch shouted. The Celestial Emperor has ordered. Her dark red lips parted slightly as she spoke. Kill without mercy. Finally, she was able to stab the sword into her body with her own hands. How satisfying was this feeling? The face that she hated was about to be destroyed by her own hands. In this world, the only face that Difanyu loved was Yu Bingxin. She was not a substitute. She would never be a substitute. Hearing this, Luo Qingqian seemed to understand her inner thoughts from her eyes. In the next second, her lips curled into an extremely faint sneer as she said, "Substitute? Then you have to have the ability to kill me first." In the next second, Luo Qingqian unsheathed her sword with her bare hands. Fragments of golden light from the exquisite ring fell down one by one, forming a complete protective cover around her. Ah! Yu Bingxin threw her head back and roared with laughter. Her emotions were almost out of control, because Luo Qingqian's last sentence was equivalent to personally admitting her identity to her. In the blink of an eye, a bright moon appeared in the middle of the pitch-black night sky. The soul-devouring pagoda at the center of the wilderness appeared faintly. The originally silent surroundings were suddenly filled with people, rushing towards the entrance of the soul-devouring pagoda. Luo Qingqian leapt, dodging Yu Bingxin's fatal attack, and arriving at the entrance of the pagoda. Chapter 2141. She shut up. Bang! Yu Bingxin's heart-wrenching scream and the sound of the soul-devouring tower closing rang out at the same time. For Luo Qingqian, the real battle had just begun. The host is climbing the soul-devouring tower now, which is almost equivalent to death. The system's voice suddenly rang in her ears. She actually felt that it was very dangerous, but now, every step she took did not give her any choice. She could only walk forward. There was no way back. There were a total of 18 people entering the soul-devouring tower at the same time as her. All of them were of a higher rank than her, regardless of whether they were gods or demons. There were no enemies in the soul-devouring tower, but there were also no friends. The 18 people would each enter an independent space created by the soul-devouring tower. The demons on each floor were different, but the demons on the same floor were of the same rank. I advise you not to go in. An enchanting voice slowly rang out. Luo Qingqian turned to look at the man who spoke to her. He was dressed in a light blue robe with red flowers at his mouth. His appearance also looked very enchanting. He continued, "With your immortal power and your injuries, you will definitely die in there. Little girl, don't be delusional about becoming a god, like the blazing flame god. That's just a myth." Luo Qingqian heard this and laughed softly. Let's wait and see. She did not know if she could reach the 6th floor, but she knew that she would not die. If people did not even have this kind of belief, why would they come to the soul-devouring tower? Then I'll wait for you. That person laughed haughtily and entered one of the illusory spaces with a prideful look on his face. Luo Qingqian frowned and finally chose the last space. As soon as she entered, she could smell the stench of corrosion. She waved her right hand, and the exquisite ring glowed with a golden light, illuminating the surroundings. She took a deep breath and looked at the scene in front of her, her brows tightly knitted. She was surrounded by piles of white bones. Each layer was more than a meter high. The bones were surrounded by white threads. She could not see what it was, but she could feel that the threads were moving. There was only a narrow passage in the middle. The deeper she went, the more bones there were. She could even hear the wails of the scattered primordial spirits. They kept ringing in her ears. Come quickly. Come quickly. When she reached the innermost part, she saw the demons waiting for her. To be more precise, they were spiders. It's been a long time since I've enjoyed a good meal. A seductive voice sounded with displeasure. "It's a pity that you're too skinny. There's not enough." 1,000-year spider spirit? The last time the original owner came in, she killed her mother. Then were those bones outside? Although the soul-devouring tower is the time, it is the soul-devouring tower is. The primordial spirits of dead demons and immortals can enter the soul-devouring pagoda at any time and come back to life. She understood. Jesus to die of life was the door. To be more specific, it should be eaten. In the next second, Luo Qingshun slowly raised the phoenix dance sword in her hand and quickly chopped down at the spider's thick leg without any hesitation. Viscous green blood spurted out in an instant, and it screamed, "Ah, how can you be so rough? I'm so scared." Chapter 2142. How could he bear to do that? Host, can you stop wasting time on this? You can't be thinking that we're in a game world, right? You think that you'll be fully recovered after drinking a bottle of blood medicine? If I make one wrong move, I'll meet you in the chaos space. Come, my delicious food. The big spider seemed to be unable to hold back, and its sticky saliva splashed everywhere. Luo Qingshun frowned, and the exquisite ring circled around her finger, finally fixing the golden light on her head. In the next second, she jumped up and attacked the top of her head. It seemed to have seen through Luo Qingshun's attack, and with a flip, countless white threads shot out of its mouth, trapping her. "Not bad. You can actually see my fate." The charming voice was full of ridicule and laughed. What a pity, what a pity. You're too weak." Luo Qingshun frowned, and the permitha flower between her eyebrows faintly appeared. In the next second, she smiled and said, "Do you know what spiders are most afraid of?" As her voice fell, her right hand moved slightly, and the phoenix dance sword turned into a fiery red light. The moment it cut through the spider's threads, there was a burst of fire. "Ah!" It cried out in alarm, and frantically tried to extinguish the fire that spread to its body. However, Luo Qingshun did not give it any chance, and jumped up, and the fiery phoenix dance sword slashed towards its head. With a pung, the giant spider exploded, and the air was filled with a rotten smell. Luo Qingshun narrowed her eyes and sheathed the phoenix dance sword. She picked up the spider's essence on the ground and walked towards the red light with a calm expression. When the essence touched the red light, there was a kacha sound, and a circular staircase appeared in front of her eyes. It seemed that this was the way to the second floor of the spirit-devouring tower. She walked up the stairs, and it was very clean, without a single bone, and there was very little dust. It seemed that those who could walk through here were all top experts, and it was a pure paradise between darkness and death. As soon as he arrived at the soul-devouring pagoda for the second time, the smell of blood assaulted his senses. The surroundings were pitch black, and only a few faint red lights could be vaguely seen. It seemed like she was the first person to reach the second level of the spirit-devouring pagoda. Bang! In the next second, a huge sound came from not far away. She was stunned for a moment. The voice was very loud. It seemed very close, but it also seemed very far away. What was that sound? Someone died. The system's voice was cold as it slowly entered her ears. Who died? This was a little too fast. The host should have some impression of this person. The system did not say who it was, but Luo Qingshun already understood the meaning of its words. The person she had told to wait and see was already dead. It seemed that waiting for the soul-devouring pagoda for 1,000 years was more about death than miracles. Not everyone could become a god, and death was especially close to everyone. In the next second, you might say goodbye to your 1,000 years of cultivation. The facts prove that this was indeed the case. Out of the 18 people who entered the spirit-devouring pagoda, a total of 5 people reached the second level, and the remaining 12 people died on the first level. There was also one person who used his own earth escape technique to escape the spirit-devouring pagoda. Chapter 2143. At the same time, in the myriad demon mirror, the power of the divine spirit, the 8 desolation profound flame, the fiery red seal rustled in the autumn wind. When the power of the divine spirit entered his body bit by bit and formed a complete primordial spirit, Yishuanji, suddenly opened his eyes. His silver hair fluttered in the wind under the effect of his divine power, appearing very enchanting. We respectfully welcomed the demon sovereign. The demons all knelt on the ground and cheered excitedly. Yishuanji's blue eyes narrowed slightly. I need to make a trip to the wilderness. Xian Ming continued to manage all matters in the myriad demon mirror. Demon sovereign, the heavenly court's troops have already gathered outside the myriad demon mirror for a long time. We have suffered great losses. Xian Ming cupped his hands. I hope you can defeat the heavenly court scoundrels first before heading to the wilderness. Yishuanji's cold eyes instantly narrowed. His blue eyes were filled with killing intent. He said softly, since they want to die in my myriad demon mirror, why shouldn't I grant them their wish? As soon as he finished speaking, the originally dark sky above the myriad demon mirror instantly turned bright purple and brilliant red. Streaks of red light tore through the sky. Oh no, the demon sovereign has awakened. The leader was the heavenly court's General Lu Meng. He bit his lip as worry filled his eyes. Heavenly General Lu, what should we do? A strange cold wind blew past. The deputy general standing next to him was clearly trembling. The person standing in front of them was the demon sovereign Yishuanji. How could a bunch of small fries from the celestial realm like them stand a chance against him? We need to report this to the celestial emperor, then we can... Before he could finish speaking, his head was chopped off by an extremely fast red light. The air was instantly filled with the smell of blood. Lu. Heavenly General Lu. The deputy general's legs trembled uncontrollably as cold sweat dripped down his face. Go back and tell Di Fanyu that the person in this world who can kill me, Yishuanji, is now. He paused for a moment before curling his lips into a smile. Someone from my family. When he said this, Luo Qingqian's figure inadvertently flashed through his mind. Although she had changed from her original red clothes to a plain white brocade robe, she still gave off a dazzling aura. He seemed to like it very much. Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 40%. At this moment, Luo Qingqian, who was desperately slaying demons on the second floor of the soul-devouring pagoda, suddenly received a favorability prompt. She was so frightened that she almost failed to dodge the attack of the bull demon. Damn it! Luo Qingqian was already shouting loudly. It was already very difficult to focus on the bull demon's vital points when facing it, and the sudden notification had disrupted her concentration. Go to hell! Ox Demon seemed to have sensed that Luo Qingqian had almost failed to dodge his attack, so his next attack was even more aggressive and decisive. However, if he was too aggressive, he would reveal a fatal flaw. A golden radiance revolves around the bull's head. Luo Qingqian leaps up with the phoenix dance sword in her hand and directly cuts off the bull's head. Bam! In just a split second, dark blood gushed out. The giant bull demon ran around aimlessly until its blood ran out. Only then did it fall to the ground with a thud. Luo Qingqian frowned. She picked up the bull demon's essence and opened the door to the third floor of the soul-devouring pagoda. Chapter 2144. Luo Qingqian glanced at her, and she also looked over at the same time. The air was silent, and after a long time, she said, I will most likely die in the third floor. If you can still go up, can you help me with something? Her voice was very clear, but there was a hint of sadness in it. But Luo Qingqian heard the most. Desolation. Speak. Although her words were concise, the fact that she asked meant that she had already decided to help her. If Miss is lucky enough to climb to the 6th floor and choose the 3rd space, you will meet a refined scholar. She took a deep breath and said, Please help me tell him that I'm here. After saying this, she could feel the tears in the eyes of the girl in front of her, but she was strong enough to hold back her tears. What is your name? Xing Tong. If you want to tell him, I will definitely pass it on for you. Luo Qingqian's brows slightly moved as she said, You don't need to go through the 3rd floor. It's just sending you to your death, so why bother? She narrowed her eyes as she looked at Xing Tong. She had countless wounds all over her body, and it was already a miracle that she could reach this point. Moreover, She was very clear that going up was sending her to her death. So why was she so stubborn? Because he always thought that I was afraid of death. He always thought that I wouldn't die for him. Xing Tong took a deep breath. Her deep eyes stared seriously in front of her as she slowly said, "But since we've agreed to meet in the underworld, I will definitely come." The Yellow Springs? Luo Qingshan was stunned, and a trace of surprise flashed in her clear eyes. She said in disbelief, "You're immortal? God, there is actually a mortal that could reach the 3rd floor of the spirit-devouring tower." Logically speaking, if the original owner was a mortal, even if she had an ancient divine artifact, she might not have been able to reach this point. What did this girl called Xing Tong rely on to stand here and defeat a demon with over 1,000 years of resentment to reach this point? I'm considered half an immortal cultivator. Xing Tong helplessly sighed and said, "My abilities are limited. Even if I use all my strength, I can only reach this point. But why are you different? You have an ancient divine artifact in your right hand." Luo Qingshan stared blankly for a moment before saying, "As expected of a cultivator, you know a lot. Wait for me here. Wait for me to deliver this message for you. Then you can consider whether you want to come up and die." As soon as her voice fell, Luo Qingshan walked into a space without saying a word, and a dazzling blue light instantly struck her. Almost every floor was thrilling, but the scales of luck seemed to be on her side every time. However, it couldn't be said that she won by luck. Perhaps it could be said that luck was also a kind of strength. She wasn't sure if Xing Tong had entered the 3rd level, but when she came out of the 4th level, she didn't see Xing Tong. 4th floor, 5th floor, 6th floor. When he reached the 6th floor, he was greeted by a world of colorful flowers. There was a huge pear tree with red ribbons hanging from it. Each ribbon had a name written on it, Star Pupil. How many years has it been? There's actually someone in this world who can reach the 6th floor of the spirit-devouring tower. A cold voice came from the air, carrying a trace of joy and loneliness. System notification. The safer the place, the more dangerous it is. Host must be careful. I know. Luo Qingshan frowned and slowly pulled out the Phoenix Dance sword in her hand, entering a state of alert. Chapter 2145. In the next second, a special fragrance slowly spread in the air. She only took one breath and felt her head become heavy. When she opened her eyes again, she was in the myriad demon's mirror. She was dressed in red silk brocade and walked step by step towards the most respected man in the myriad demon's mirror. He had a head of silver hair and a face that looked like it was carved out of the best jade by the heavens. He had a pair of rare azure eyes that shone with a dazzling light. Yi Xuanji reached out to her, while his other hand gently wrapped around her waist. Everyone cheered and raised their cups to celebrate the fact that she had married him. The night was silent. They tossed and turned, hugged and kissed each other. Everything seemed so beautiful. The next year, they had a child. A divine light descended from the heavens. He was born with divine power and 2 types of divine power. One came from the gods and the other from the demons. Qing, it's a boy. Let me see. He's so beautiful. He really looks like you. How can you describe a boy as beautiful? Then what do you think he should be called? Name? She froze and answered without hesitation. How about Nyenin? In that instant, her entire body trembled and her heart beat wildly. Her originally heavy mind gradually cleared up. When she opened her eyes again, she was in the 6th floor of the soul-devouring pagoda. The scholar standing in front of her looked at her in disbelief and exclaimed, "How is that possible? How could you leave the illusion I set up so quickly?" In the next second, she laughed coldly. A sharp light flashed in her eyes as she looked at him and said, "Cultivators are so troublesome. They don't dare to fight head-on and only like to set up illusions like this." If it wasn't for the fact that the 2 words Nien and held an incomparably important position in her heart, she might not have been able to leave so quickly. It was even possible that she wouldn't have been able to leave. Interesting. Then let's fight. In the blink of an eye, the scholar raised the fan in his hand and attacked her without any hesitation. Luo Qingshan slightly knit her brows and easily jumped back to dodge his attack. In the next second, When she picked up the Phoenix dance sword again, she found that her breathing had become especially rapid and her head was heavy again. Damn it! There must be something wrong with this flower fragrance. Despicable. Luo Qingshun clenched her teeth. She was practically fighting with her life on the line. The scholar did not expect Luo Qingshun to be so fast. By the time he reacted, the Phoenix dance sword was already at his throat. PFFF. Luo Qingshun clutched her chest and spat out a mouthful of blood. She knew very well in her heart that the longer the fight dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for her. Thus, she could only use this method of killing 1,000 enemies at the cost of 800 of her own to quickly finish off her opponent. Amazing, truly amazing. The scholar's eyes turned cold. His body kept emitting black gas. He looked at her and said, "But you're still going to lose because you didn't kill me in one move." In a battle between experts, if one didn't quickly kill the other while holding the advantage, it was very likely that the situation would turn around and one would be killed by the other. Thus, a soft-hearted person did not have the qualifications to become a king. It's not that I don't want to kill you, but Xing Tong wants me to pass on a message to you. Luo Qingshun's eyes were indifferent as she looked at him coldly and said, "She said she's coming." In that instant, the black gas on the scholar's body disappeared, and he fell into a state of shock. Chapter 2146. Luo Qingshun roughly explained what had happened. Even though she wasn't sure how the scholar on the 6th floor of the soul-devouring pagoda had gone to the 3rd floor to look for Xing Tong. But the scholar's eyes suddenly lit up when he heard her words. He took out his essence with his bare hands and handed it to Luo Qingshun. He looked at her and said, "You are very strong. In my eyes, you're the 2nd blazing fire god. But I admire you more than the fire god." Umph. Luo Qingshun didn't feel embarrassed at all when she took his essence. "Because you could have used Xing Tong to force me to give way, but you didn't." He chuckled. "You used a battle method to deal with it cleanly. You're right. It's like your so-called illusion. I'm actually very shameless." Luo Qingshun narrowed her eyes. "But you're still a man." With that, Luo Qingshun took his essence and opened the path to the 7th floor of the soul-devouring pagoda. This was a path that even the original owner hadn't taken, but she had taken it today. At the same time, at the entrance of the soul-devouring pagoda, a sandstorm raged in the center of the wilderness. Lightning flashed in the sky, striking the soul-devouring pagoda again and again. The air was filled with a murderous aura. Yi Xuanji stood with his hands behind his back, his eyes filled with worry. After he finished off the people from the heavenly court, he rushed to the wilderness as fast as he could. At this time, he couldn't enter the soul-devouring pagoda anymore. If Luo Qingshun didn't come out of the soul-devouring pagoda by midnight, she would be imprisoned in the soul-devouring pagoda for 1,000 years until it appeared again. There were only 6 hours left until midnight. He stood in the wind, closed his eyes, and tried his best to sense the half of his primordial spirit in her body. But he and Luo Qingshun didn't expect that the demon on the 7th floor of the soul-devouring pagoda was a child. Luo Qingshun could feel the strength of the child in front of her. But if he didn't attack her, she didn't know what to do. The child standing in front of him was humming a song and dancing back and forth. He didn't seem to have done anything, but Luo Qingshun could feel a huge force pressing down on her bit by bit, making it hard for her to breathe. Damn it! She clutched her chest and squatted down, breathing heavily. "Elder sister, you have to be careful. The mechanism is coming." The tender voice sounded like a kind reminder, but also like a conceited pride. As soon as he finished speaking, countless dark red triangular nails shot towards her. She turned sideways, but she was still hit by 4 or 5 bullets. There was a sweet taste in his mouth as he spat out another mouthful of blood. "Sister, you're here again. Big sister, there's a mechanism here too. Big sister, be careful." In less than a quarter of an hour, her entire body was covered in wounds. Blood dripped down drop by drop. She strenuously raised her right hand, and the exquisite ring's golden light circled around her fingertips twice before dimming down. At this moment, she felt her eyelids getting heavier and heavier. He wanted to resist, but he didn't even know where the child's life was. Could it be that she was going to die here? Could it be that she couldn't get her revenge? Ching-chun, your heart. Just as she fell into despair, Yi Wuji's voice rang out. Red light instantly filled the entire space. The child cried out in shock, "Demon God!" In the next second, Luo Qingqin's phoenix dance sword steadily pierced through his heart. In that instant, a golden light streaked across the sky. Her entire body was covered in golden light. The spider lily between her eyebrows became clearer and clearer. The spider lily spread out from her feet and slowly spread throughout the entire soul-devouring pagoda. Chapter 2147. Hong. With a giant sound, the door of the soul-devouring tower slowly opened. In the wilderness, golden sand flew everywhere, and the dark clouds in the sky quickly moved. The thick killing intent in the air slowly dissipated with the disappearance of the soul-devouring tower. Luo Qingqun held the phoenix dance sword in her hand. Her white clothes were already dyed red with blood. Her eyes trembled slightly. She closed her eyes and slowly opened them again. Through the fine sand in her blurred vision, she seemed to vaguely see a person's silhouette. His long silver hair was neatly combed with a jasper crown. He was dressed in black and was looking at her with a deep gaze. Ding! Affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now more than 50%. When the prompt sounded, she felt her fingers tremble slightly, and her eyes couldn't help turning red. She didn't seem to have experienced anything big. She had just narrowly escaped death a few times in the soul-devouring tower. But every time she was in danger of death, there wasn't a single person beside her. She clearly had 2 natural divine weapons in her hands, but she was still laughed at by people who had died on the first floor. She had experienced so much, so what did this count for? But when she felt that she was strong enough to be alone, she suddenly found that there was a person standing where she came from waiting for her. He stood there firmly, not moving a single step even when the wind blew. He slowly reached his hand out to her and said, "Come here." At this moment, she almost couldn't control her emotions and flew in Yi Xuanji's direction. When she was a meter away from him, she slowly stopped. She pursed her lips and looked at him in a daze. "I thought you would hug me." He raised his right hand, and when his slender fingers touched the hair in front of her forehead, a red light suddenly lit up at his fingertips. Yi Xuanji was suddenly stunned and quickly took back his hand. There was a trace of fear that flashed in his deep eyes. It was very, very light, but it immediately returned to normal. Probably because she had just escaped death countless times, Luo Qingqun didn't notice his gaze. She just curled her lips and looked at him with a smile filled with mixed feelings. Isn't it a bit too abrupt to meet for the first time? Although the original owner had already met him 1,000 years ago, this was the first time she had seen him after coming to this plane for so many days. Silence filled the air. Yi Xuanji didn't say anything, but there were complicated emotions in his eyes that lingered for a long time. After an unknown amount of time, he let out a soft sigh as a charming smile appeared on his face. He raised his right hand and grabbed her wrist, pulling her into his embrace. Luo Qingqun didn't expect him to suddenly make such a big move. Her heart thumped, and she fell into his arms without any warning. Ding! Affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 60%. Yi Xuanji gently patted her back. A faint liguang flashed through his deep eyes as he whispered into her ear, "Thank you for your hard work, little flower fairy." They didn't know when it started, but the revolutionary camaraderie between them suddenly changed. Perhaps it was when she risked everything to steal a god soul for him. Perhaps it was when she didn't hesitate to jump off the god's punishment platform. Or perhaps it was when they were talking in the silent night in the wilderness. It didn't matter when it started, because Yi Xuanji was very clear that he cared a lot about the person in his arms right now. Chapter 2148. Luo Qingqun blushed and retorted, "Please call me Lord Flower Goddess." Now that she'd successfully ascended to godhood, she didn't fear anyone from the heavenly court. Presumably, the heavenly court already knew that she had become a god. Within the supreme palace of the 33rd heaven, the immortals all lowered their heads, not daring to say a word. Di Yufan's face was ashen. Not to mention the fact that the celestial race had defeated the demon race. The flower immortal who stole the god soul had already ascended to godhood. The heavenly court couldn't possibly do anything to her. We believe that the flower immortal was originally a member of the heavenly court. Ascending to godhood isn't a bad thing for the heavenly court. Perhaps we can temporarily set aside the matter of the god soul. Little did he know that before Lei Jun could say anything, he was interrupted by Yu Bingxin. Set aside? Why should we? Ever since she'd taken the god power pill, Yu Bingxin gave off a feeling that she was neither human nor ghost. Although Di Yufan had pardoned her for the sake of their 1,000-year relationship, he'd forbidden her from entering the Supreme Palace. But she'd still come. Heavenly Lady Yu, the immortals froze, but still cupped their hands in greeting. You're all afraid of her, but I'm not. Yu Bingxin clenched her fists, her eyes red. Don't tell me you're planning to let someone who stole a god soul to become a god in the heavenly court? No, absolutely not. Bingxin, don't mess around. Di Fanyu narrowed his eyes, displeasure evident in his overbearing gaze. Ever since Poppy, who looked like the blazing flame god whose primordial spirit had dissipated 1,000 years ago, appeared, Yu Bingxin's originally gentle temperament had suddenly changed. He couldn't understand everything she was doing now, and even felt a bit disgusted. Celestial Emperor, as the person with the highest authority in the heavenly court, how can you let someone who stole a god soul into the heavenly court? Yu Bingxin had clearly been blinded by anger, and even her words carried condemnation. When Di Fanyu heard this, his face twisted even more. He frowned and looked at Yu Bingxin with a dignified expression. Then his heavenly concubine Yu, who ate a dozen forbidden pills, should I punish her severely? His voice was cold, penetrating her heart bit by bit. In the next second, Yu Bingxin staggered back and said, I did this for the sake of the heavenly court, to kill all the demons in the myriad demon mirror. How can the heavenly emperor treat me like this? Oomph. Di Fanyu snorted. If I didn't know you were heavenly lady Yu, I would have thought that the South Heaven Gate had been conquered by the demons. As soon as he finished speaking, Di Fanyu abruptly stood up, waved his sleeves, and strode forward. Farewell, Celestial Emperor. Di Fanyu would never have thought that his attitude towards Yu Bingxin today would completely hurt her heart. Perhaps it was because of this that so many unexpected things happened later on. From that day onwards, Yu Bingxin locked herself in her sleeping quarters, not taking a single step out. She didn't look for Di Fanyu, and Di Fanyu didn't look for her either. The two husband and wife of 1,000 years seemed to have drifted apart because of a single argument. Perhaps in Di Fanyu's heart, she was just a replacement. Now that the main person had appeared, she had no time to think about a replacement. As for Yu Bingxin, her heart was overflowing with hatred. She hated Luo Qingshun. Because of her appearance, she could only live in her shadow forever. Chapter 2149. She had had enough of being a substitute for 1,000 years. She wanted change. She had to change. Since Luo Qingshun could regain her godly power through the soul-devouring pagoda, she could do it too. As for Di Fanyu, she hadn't been able to enter his heart after such a long time. Their relationship had become so fragile as time passed. Now, she only wanted to become stronger, to become extremely powerful, and then kill Luo Qingshun with her own hands. At the same time, in the Myriad Demon's Mirror. This was Luo Qingshun's first time in the Myriad Demon's Mirror. She felt inexplicably safe behind Yi Xuanji. However, he seemed to be walking very quickly, as if he was in a hurry to do something. Little flower fairy, walk faster. I'll show you our palace. He turned around. His gaze was gentle, and there was a touch of warmth in it. The fiendish demons, standing on both sides of the plate, cheered excitedly. They were not as ugly as they had imagined. Every fiendish demon was wearing their favorite clothes. Some were even no different from mortals. They wore beautiful clothes and light makeup. Actually, the most different thing was the feeling of communicating with their hearts. The biggest difference between the 33 levels of heaven and the Myriad Demon's Mirror was that when Di Fanyu brought her to the 33 levels of heaven, everyone looked at her with hostility. However, when Yi Xuanji brought her to the Myriad Demon's Mirror, The demons here were sincerely cheering for her and welcoming her arrival. Suddenly, she confirmed the thought she had for a long time. There was no good or evil in this world. The most important thing was still the human heart. Yi Xuanji, please call me the flower goddess. Luo Qing-chun quickly came to his side and said with a smile, or you can call me based on seniority. Grandma? You? Luo Qing-chun looked at him unhappily. Call me big sister. If I really want to call you grandma based on seniority, it's not wrong for me to call you grandma. Yi Xuanji narrowed his deep eyes. Or there are other names. Do you want to hear them? His gaze was very gentle. It was hard to imagine that a demon god would have such a gentle gaze. It made people feel deeply intoxicated. I don't want to hear them. She pursed her lips, and her face became a bit hot. She felt that Yi Xuanji didn't say anything, but she felt very embarrassed. It's fine if you don't want to hear them. He stopped and tapped her forehead with his right hand. Anyway, they aren't good words. Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 70%. It had to be said that Yi Xuanji's fortress was really beautiful. It was different from the solemn and grand feeling of the heavenly palace. The myriad demons' mirror gave off a feeling similar to the stars in the night sky. Every corner of the mirror was paved with crystals, and the stars reflected in the water. The light blue lanterns reflected each other, forming a beautiful picture scroll. So beautiful. Luo Qing-chun couldn't help sighing as a faint sparkle appeared in her eyes. Yi Xuanji, Yi Xuanji's, Yi Xuanji. Yi Xuanji looked at the bright night sky and gave her a cup of fruit wine. Have a taste of the wine specially brewed by the myriad demons' mirror. Luo Qing-chun looked at it. The wine cup was filled with blood red, and her eyes trembled. Perhaps I can't completely adapt to the wine the demons drink. Relax, this is fruit wine. Yi Xuanji softly patted her head. What are you thinking about? Chapter 2150. The fruits of the myriad demons' mirror were different from those of other places. Every fruit tree was big and red, and the fruit wine they produced was especially sweet. Luo Qing-chun liked to drink it very much, and she had a good tolerance for alcohol, so she always drank a few more cups. However, Yi Xuanji refused to let her drink, and he always said to her seriously, "Why should a girl drink wine? Mmp, weren't you the one who brought me to drink the first time?" During the days she lived in the myriad demons' mirror, Luo Qing-chun felt especially relaxed. Aside from some inexplicable palpitations, there were no other symptoms. Even if she became a god, she still couldn't completely recover. She had suffered such heavy injuries before, which was why she hadn't fully recovered. As for those who hurt her, she would take revenge on them one by one. In November, the first snow fell in the myriad demons' mirror. Yi Xuanji had to leave the myriad demons' mirror for a few days, so Luo Qing-chun enjoyed herself and drank all the fruit wine that he had stored for many years. The longer the fruit wine was stored, the more fragrant it was. The little monsters of the myriad demons' mirror were very good to her. When they saw her, they would not only salute her, but they would also bring her a lot of delicious food from the myriad demons' mirror. When Yi Xuanji wasn't there, Xian Ming, who was in charge of all the affairs of the myriad demons' mirror, was also very good to her. He always asked about her well-being and was probably a very humble person. It wasn't that she was biased, but she felt that the myriad demons' mirror was better than the heavenly palace, and it was more than 100 times better. Yi Xuanji handled things very quickly, and he returned to the myriad demons' mirror 7 days later. Luo Qing-chun originally thought that he would take her to the heavenly palace, but she didn't expect that he would instead take her to the mortal world to have fun. Don't tell me you went to the mortal world for the past 7 days. Luo Qing-chun pursed her lips and said, "Did you take a fancy to some girl?" She originally thought that this was a joke, but she didn't expect that Yi Xuanji would pull her into his arms without another word. He didn't say anything and just quietly hugged her, enjoying the tranquility and beauty of this moment. What's wrong? She froze for a moment. She felt that Yi Xuanji had become strange after returning. He couldn't pinpoint exactly what was strange about it. If Yi Xuanji didn't mention it, she wouldn't have been able to guess. "It's nothing. I just wanted to hug you and see if hugging a god feels different from hugging an ordinary mortal girl. He gently let go of her, with a faint smile and reluctance in his eyes. So you went to the mortal world to hug other girls. No wonder you wanted to bring me to the mortal world as soon as you came back. So that's why. She didn't know why, but when she heard Yixuanji say that, her heart felt a little stuffy and flustered. Whether it was the truth or a joke, he was just unhappy. Qing Chun. He saw her angry appearance, and his voice became incomparably serious. He looked at her and said, "Actually, I'm not familiar with the blazing flame god, but I feel that you're not like her." Perhaps it was because one's personality would inevitably change after the primordial spirit was reunited, or perhaps it was because too much time had passed. People would always change, but he could truly feel that the person he respected was her from 1,000 years ago, and the person he cared about was her from 1,000 years later. "Don't look like her." Luo Qingshun narrowed her eyes and smiled softly. "Or maybe you're not like her to begin with." The original host personality was actually very strange. She was very cold and arrogant, but when she loved someone, she wouldn't say much. If that person loved her, she would calmly accept it. If that person didn't love her, she would pretend that it didn't matter. She couldn't do this. "Of course you're not like her." Yi Xuanji's beautiful eyes sparkled as he curled his lips into a smile. She shouldn't be jealous that easily. Chapter 2151. She wasn't jealous, but Yi Xuanji told her that it was the Qixi festival in the mortal world, and the city was very lively. He asked if she wanted to go with him. Of course, she was willing to go. After all, there was food and drink. She could also visit Ning, and Xiaolang. She heard that the moon-gazer serpent had placed them in a small wooden house in a sea of flowers 5 kilometers west of the city. She heard that there were magnolia flowers in front of the house, and Ninger also planted some vegetables. She heard that Xiaolang was very good at fishing. The wooden house was near the river, and he often caught fresh fish to make fish soup for Ning. The moon-gazer serpent was still the original moon-gazer serpent. He didn't go against his original heart because of the comfortable situation. However, she was still a bit worried. What kind of punishment would the moon-gazer serpent receive for helping her steal the god souls and hide them? After thinking about it, she realized that he was a god after all. Even if Di Fanyu wanted to do something, he probably wouldn't dare to do anything to the moon-gazer serpent when a heavenly court was so weak. The path from myriad demons mirror to the room was a gray staircase with smoke on both sides. The closer it was to the mortal world, the louder it was. "Pancakes, pancakes, delicious pancakes, high-quality rouge. Do you need any? This batch of silk is new. It's the best fabric. Miss, do you want to bring one? This emerald green one suits you so well." Waves of shouts entered her ears. Suddenly, she felt that the feeling of being in the mortal world was much more comfortable. It wasn't the kind of life where she could release spiritual power with a wave of her right hand and be omnipotent no matter what she did. This kind of life didn't seem to have any meaning. "Haha, so lively." Luo Qingxin chuckled. Her eyes flashed with Liguang. Yi Xuanji, who was standing beside her, looked at her with his beautiful eyes. He smiled and said, "I knew you would like it. As expected of the festival of the cowherd and the weaver girl. There are loving couples everywhere." "Then you're wrong." Yi Xuanji looked up and shook his head. "They might not be husband and wife." Luo Qingshan snorted and said, "If they're not husband and wife, are they brother and sister?" She suddenly thought a sentence that was often said in the real world. "I hope all lovers are long-lost siblings. For example, me and you." Yi Xuanji narrowed his eyes. He couldn't hide his smile. "Or in Qingqin's heart, we are already brother and sister." Before Yi Xianji's voice fell, Luo Qingchun cut him off without any hesitation. She pretended to be proud as she said, "I already said that because of seniority, you should call me Big Sister." "I won't." Yi Xuanji's T, Yi Xuanji. S. Yi Tis. Yi Xuya was a star moon's. TTTS. Est. S's but A's was that. Crossing the god's power, snatching the god's soul. After going through so many dangerous things, he was now holding her hand as they stood in the middle of the bustling market. With a faint smile, he told her that today was a holiday that belonged to them. Okay. She pursed her lips and smiled. Her right hand gently touched her slightly red ears and said, "Then little brother Xianji, I want to eat Tonghalu." Chapter 2152. Although Luo Qingshun didn't compromise and call Yi Xuanji brother, she still received 2 sticks of candy haws. The sky gradually darkened. Luo Qingshun raised her head by chance, and a resplendent starry sky entered her eyes. The diamond-like stars were scattered across the vast and boundless sky. Streaks of silver-white light were drawn in the sky, as if they were drawing a Milky Way. This place is really too beautiful. The Plenilune Serpent really made a wise decision to place Ning, and Darling Shao here. This city is called G City. It's the border of this world. The people here don't believe in gods and don't fear demons. They believe in miracles and believe that as long as they are sincere, they will definitely achieve it. Yi Xuanji glanced at her from the corner of his eyes. A complicated emotion flashed through his deep eyes. Luo Qingshun looked at his gaze and frowned slightly. "You seem to be thinking about something? Anyone who stands at a high position can't have no distractions." Yi Xuanji said honestly, "The Celestial Emperor is the same." In that instant, Luo Qingshun seemed to understand what the emotion in his eyes was. There was a persistent belief in his heart. As the only demon god in the world, his strong belief could help him accomplish what he wanted to accomplish. "You're different from him." Luo Qingshun withdrew her faint smile and pursed her lips. She looked at the beautiful sky and said, "He doesn't deserve to be a god." Memories of the past kept appearing in his mind. In order to achieve his goal, he disregarded all obstacles and came to Fire Phoenix Palace again and again. He wanted to become her disciple. Even if she set the condition for him to become a god, he still did his best to complete it. What was the end? It was just a strong belief in his heart and boundless power. "Perhaps you don't know me well enough." Yi Xuanji's lips curled into a smile. There was a hint of helplessness in his eyes. A faint light flashed through his eyes as he said, "No one would show their terrifying dark side to the outside world. They would hide it very well from the start." Luo Qingshun listened to him like this. Every word was like a swarm of ants crushing her heart. It was very uncomfortable. At that moment, she suddenly felt that Yi Xuanji's gaze was a bit unfamiliar. Even with 70% favorability, it still made her feel unfamiliar. The play in front is starting. Everyone, let's go and watch. The incomparably silent atmosphere between the two was broken by the person beside her. Yi Xuanji raised his right hand and tapped her forehead. "Let's go. Let's go take a look." After a full 3 seconds, her lips curled up helplessly and said, "Okay." In fact, although it had only been a few seconds, she could clearly feel the uneasiness in her heart slowly spreading from the deepest part of her heart. But the warmth from his palm was real, so she wasn't as worried as before. It was a simple stage. The female lead played the role of a little fox who cultivated into a human form. The male lead was the war god of the heavenly court. The first time they met, the little fox was heavily injured by him. Just as she was about to turn into ashes, the war god stopped. He saw her slowly lick the of. At that moment, his heart was moved, and he let the little fox go. The second time they met, the god of war had fainted in the jade bamboo forest after being heavily injured while fighting against the king of the demon world. The Celestial Emperor saw this and didn't want to save him. After all, she hadn't recovered from the injuries she suffered because of him. Chapter 2153. When the war god woke up, he was very grateful to the little fox and decided to take her back to the heavenly court, but she refused. Yao and gods were destined to be enemies. The little fox was kind, but she wasn't stupid. What she didn't expect was that the two of them would develop feelings for each other while recuperating. The war god promised the little fox that he would come find her after reporting back to the heavenly court. The little fox nodded seriously. "Don't go anywhere. Just stay here and wait for me to come back." "All right, I'll wait for you." "You have to come back. I'll wait for you forever." 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Ever since that day, the war god never returned to the jade bamboo forest. But strangely, every tree in the jade bamboo forest that hadn't bloomed in 10,000 years had bloomed. Every spring, thousands of petals would flutter in the air, filling the air with fragrance. It was a beautiful sight. The little fox didn't know why the war god didn't come back, but she obediently waited. Until one day, she heard the little swallow tell her that the heavenly court was holding a grand wedding for the war god and the celestial emperor's daughter. The little fox left the jade bamboo forest without another word. But strangely, it was as if a barrier had been set up around the forest. No matter what she did, she couldn't leave. In the end, the little fox used a knife to cut off her tail. She transformed it into a sharp weapon and cut a hole in the barrier. She dispersed all of her cultivation and came to the heavenly court to see the war god and the celestial emperor's daughter. The war god was still the war god of the past. His face didn't seem to have changed at all over the years. The celestial emperor's daughter was devastatingly beautiful. The two of them were a perfect match. The little fox cried. She didn't know why things had turned out this way. It was as if the promise they'd made never existed. Later, she was thrown down by heavenly soldiers for trespassing into the heavenly palace. She thought she'd be smashed to pieces, but when she fell into the jade bamboo forest, she was firmly held back. From then on, the little fox was depressed. She never left the jade bamboo forest again. She focused on cultivation and didn't care about the mortal world. Apart from the accumulation of hatred in her heart, she had no other emotions. Another year, 10 years, 100 years, 300 years. The vibrant aura of the green bamboo forest had become increasingly dim over the years. In the end, all the trees returned to their original state, and not a single tree bloomed a single flower. Finally, on the 300th year, she ascended to become an immortal and rightfully arrived at the 99th heaven. The war god frowned and said, "Have we met before? So the memory of a heartless man isn't that good?" "Heartless man? Why do you say that? Do you still remember the little fox from the jade bamboo forest 300 years ago?" The war god's expression changed. He was clearly extremely shocked. The little fox looked at her shocked expression and said with a mocking smile, "Looks like the war god has remembered. So it's you." War god helplessly shook his head and said, "I've never been to the jade bamboo forest. The person who went there 300 years ago was my twin brother, not me." The little fox froze on the spot when she heard this. She never thought that there would be two identical war gods in this world. As for her, she finally found out the truth of what happened back then from her little brother. It was still the abnormality of the jade green bamboo forest. Chapter 2154. After war, God knew about this. For the little fox's safety, he took out his primordial spirit without any hesitation and gave it to the jade bamboo forest. He was the heaven realm war god. No one could enter the place he guarded. The heavenly emperor and empress were very shocked and regretted their decision, so they never sent anyone to the jade bamboo forest again. The reason why the jade bamboo forest was so prosperous was because he saw that the little fox was sad, so he scattered his primordial spirit to make her happy, including the fact that the little fox could become an immortal so quickly. It was all related to war god. After the little fox knew everything, she ran to the jade bamboo forest like crazy, but there was no longer war god's aura there. From then on, she guarded the jade bamboo forest day and night, just like how war god protected her in the past, until he died. Pa, 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 pa. After a few seconds of silence, there was a burst of applause. Luo Qingshun narrowed her eyes, and her eyes turned slightly red. It was indeed a very moving story, but it had a very tragic ending. Yi Xuanji, standing beside her, fell into a long silence. She called him many times, but he couldn't pull himself out of the story. "What's wrong?" Luo Qingshun stood on her tiptoes and softly patted his head. She said with a faint smile, "Big brother Xuanji, wake up. The story is over." Ah! In that instant, he didn't hesitate to take her into his embrace. He said with a soft laugh beside her ear, "So there are many times when what you see isn't the truth. Everyone can lie to you. Don't believe anyone. Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 80%. This was the first time that someone gave her affection, but she wasn't happy at all. She thought that she would suddenly fall into a warm embrace and hear his gentle words of love, but she didn't know that it was an inexplicably cold advice. I know. Luo Qingshan closed her eyes and gave a self-deprecating laugh. I used to be the blazing flame god. The betrayal I've experienced is far more than you can imagine. He softly replied, but he didn't let her go at all. His hands tightened as if he was using all his strength to hug her. It was late at night, but she didn't sleep at all. It wasn't because of what Yi Xuanji had said, but because the palpitations in her heart were growing stronger as she lay in bed. Ever since she ascended to godhood and came out of the soul-devouring pagoda, she had this feeling. It was as if she was suddenly out of breath. It seemed that the severe injuries she suffered in the soul-devouring pagoda still affected her. Or perhaps it was because her primordial spirit had been reassembled, so it would take more than a day or two for her to recover. What Luo Qingshan didn't expect was that she didn't fall asleep. Instead, she witnessed a white light falling from the sky and exploding with a bang. Qingshan. A second later, Yi Xuanji's voice came from a door. She suddenly stood up and opened the door. Did you see that? That white light. Amen. Yi Xuanji's voice was very low. He frowned and said, Godfall light. I haven't. Luo Qingshan took a deep breath and said, But I've heard of it. What do you mean? When your primordial spirit dissipated back then, this was the scene. Yi Xuanji's brows were tightly knit as he looked at her and said, Godfall light. There was a god in heaven and earth, and his primordial spirit dissipated. Chapter 2155. No matter what, let's go to the star velvet sea of flowers first. Yi Xuanji grabbed her hand and said, Don't be afraid. The god perishing light might have other meanings. Luo Qingshan knew Yi Xuanji was comforting her, but this was the god perishing light. There were only 4 gods left in this world. Di Fan Yu, the moon-gazer serpent, Yi Xuanji, and her. This god perishing light couldn't be Di Fan Yu, and she was with Yi Xuanji, so it could only be the star velvet sea of flowers was known as the most beautiful place in the world. Hundreds of flowers bloomed, and birds, beasts, and insects chirped. It was a beautiful place. But tonight, it was so dim that there wasn't a single ray of light or sound. It was as if it had fallen into a deathly silence. Moon-gazer serpent. She almost flew towards the wooden house. She waved her right hand, and the exquisite ring lit up half of the sea of flowers. She closed her eyes, and beads of sweat appeared on her forehead. No matter how she used her divine power, she couldn't sense the moon-gazer serpent's presence. Qingshan, don't speak. Qingshan, can you? Before she could finish, Yi Xuanji gently covered her teary eyes. His cold voice came from behind her. The moon-gazer serpent wouldn't want to see you like this. I'm the one who harmed him. Luo Qingshan bit her lip and said, I should have known. How could someone like Di Fan Yu let him go? Back then, he could treat the original owner so cruelly. Back then, he probably had some feelings for the original owner, but he could still be so ruthless. Now, the moon-gazer serpent was just a god to him. He was the celestial emperor, so it really wasn't that hard to kill him. I think we should go somewhere first. Yi Xuanji's brows were tightly furrowed as a dark light flashed in his eyes. Luo Qingshan's eyes trembled. Oh no, Ninger, when they arrived at the wooden house, the entire yard was a mess. The ground was covered in pieces, and the blood had already dried up. Unless it's someone who's not an exalted immortal or a god, there's no way they can use spells to tear a person into pieces. Yi Xuanji's slightly cold voice slowly rang out in the quiet wooden house. Luo Qingshan bent down and slowly picked up the jade pendant on the ground. The first time she met Ning, she was wearing this jade pendant. She looked so gentle and obedient that she could not help but meddle in other people's business. However, reality proved that she had unknowingly harmed her. Qingshan, she replied. Her voice was as calm as water, without the slightest fluctuation. What do you want? There was a hint of heartache in Yi Xuanji's eyes as he slowly said, I will always be by your side. He didn't want to see her like this, but there was nothing he could do. He could only silently stay by her side and accompany her to do all the things she wanted to do. How is it? Luo Qingshun closed her eyes, and a hint of red appeared in her clear eyes. She coldly said, "If I don't destroy the heavenly court, I won't be called Luo Qingshun." Perhaps she could only find you, Bingxin, and defon you to settle the score with the original owner 1,000 years ago, and not involve anyone else. But now, since these immortals were so ruthless, then they could not blame her for being ruthless. The Moon Gazer Serpent's life, Ning Er's life, Darling Zhao's life, she wanted the entire heavenly court to be buried with her. Chapter 2156. The winds and clouds change color. Thick layers of dark clouds covered the originally white and blue sky. Gusts of wind and death filled the air with a heavy clamor. The atmosphere in the heavenly court sank into a deathly stillness. Defon naturally knew that Poppy wouldn't let the heavenly court off the hook after the Moon Gazer's death. To be more precise, she should be called Luo Qingshun. Celestial Emperor, we think we should explain things clearly to them. The heavenly court has always valued the high gods. Why would we kill the Moon Gazer? I think the Pagoda Immortal is right. Now that the Hellflower Goddess has successfully ascended, she's a member of the heavenly court. We should explain things to her. That's right, that's right. A cold glint flashed through Defon eyes. He chuckled self-deprecatingly. She won't believe the words, "The heavenly court has always valued the high gods." What should we do? The immortals all fell into a state of panic. After all, the heavenly court was relatively weak right now. If the demons enter the palace, they'd have a hard time defending it. What's there to fear? General Tianlang said from his side. 1,000 years ago, didn't the demons enter the palace as well? In the end, they were defeated. Now that 1,000 years have passed, evil can no longer prevail over good. This subordinate request to battle. The arbiter of fate sighed softly. But the blazing fire goddess who defeated the demon god 1,000 years ago is a member of the heavenly court. Now she's on the other side. Although it took some time for the immortal in charge of the three realms to figure out that the current Hellflower Goddess was the blazing fire goddess from 1,000 years ago. 1,000 years ago, the heavenly court didn't hold back at all. 1,000 years later, she'd definitely come back filled with hatred. This was going to be a bloody battle. 6 hours later, the heavenly court entered a state of preparation for battle. Whether the immortals were in the mortal realm or traveling the world, they were all urgently summoned back to the 33rd layer of heaven. In truth, the heavenly court didn't lose to the myriad demons' mirror in terms of military strength. 300,000 heavenly soldiers and 100,000 heavenly generals. To the myriad demons' mirror, which had less than 100,000 demons, the heavenly court could completely crush them. However, the myriad demon mirror had two of the most terrifying people in the world, the devil lord Yi Xuanji and the red spider lily goddess Luo Qingshun. At this moment, Defon heart was filled with an indescribable emotion. He didn't want to see the war, but he wanted to see her. At that time on the God Punishment platform, her white clothes were dyed red with blood, and she pulled out the weapon in his hand with her bare hands. Hot blood splattered on his face, but she didn't show any expression. Whether it was pain or hatred, there was nothing. That pair of determined eyes seemed to be telling him that she was back. Since everything started here, then it should end here? At the same time, in the star velvet flower sea, Luo Qingshun was wearing a plain white dress with scattered flowers. Her hair was combed into a bun with a white flower on it. There was a silver-white empty tomb. This tomb was already built when the Moon Gazer serpent was still alive. There was an empty tombstone with all kinds of small flowers on both sides. He will be at ease here. Yi Xuanji slowly walked forward and silently stood beside her. He could feel the sadness in her heart. She took a deep breath and pursed her lips. I just feel sorry for him. Maybe it's not so bad to be a mortal. At least, she wouldn't get involved in other people's affairs. At least, she wouldn't die. Chapter 2157. For the first time, I feel like I'm not so isolated and helpless. Luo Qingshun looked to the side and into his bottomless eyes. she asked, about Ning and Darling Xiao. Don't worry. I've taken care of everything. No matter if it was a human or a god, someone had to send them off when they left this world. At the very least, they had to leave with dignity. He originally thought that he had stolen a god's soul and saved Darling Xiao so that he and Ning could be together forever. He didn't expect that things would go against his wishes in the end. She replied faintly. She looked at the dark sky and said, we should get down to business. Okay. Yi Xuanji nodded. His deep eyes shone with an unfathomable light. Luo Qingshun turned around slightly. She had just taken 2 steps when she suddenly felt a faint blue light flash behind her. It was the aura of the moon gazer serpent. Wait, she exclaimed and turned around. She frowned and looked at the empty tomb in front of her. You didn't feel the aura of the moon gazer serpent. She wasn't very sure. First, it was because she had just ascended to godhood. Many of her spiritual powers had instantly become powerful but unstable. Second, her emotions hadn't been very stable recently. I didn't feel its aura. Yi Xuanji turned around and frowned slightly. He fixed his gaze on the empty tomb and shook his head. There's no aura of a primordial spirit. A primordial spirit is different from a mortal soul. After a primordial spirit disperses, it will fall into a deep sleep for a long time. The longer the interval, the more likely it is to be sensed. Luo Qingshun understood what Yi Xuanji meant. She just didn't want to hear it. She really hoped that the moon gazer serpent could reform its primordial spirit and return. But she knew that even if it was possible, it would be thousands of years in the future. 7 days later, Luo Qingshun, dressed in silver armor, and the devil army led by Yi Xuanji, fought their way to the 33rd layer of heaven. They fought day and night, fighting to the death. Blood covered the Milky Way. Whether it was the devils or the celestials, there were countless casualties. But the devils had Yi Xuanji, while the celestials didn't. Luo Qingshun probably only truly understood how powerful Yi Xuanji was after this battle of endless darkness. With just a slight movement of his hand, he could shatter the nascent divinity of an exalted immortal as easily as blowing off dust. His spell was clean and efficient, and he killed the exalted immortal in one strike. Heavenly Emperor, Southern Heavenly Gate can't hold on much longer. General Tianlang rushed in with blood all over his body. He knelt on the ground and said, Heavenly Emperor, please make a decision. At this moment, Di Fanyu's expression was calm. He wasn't as anxious as before. After all, what was to come would come. He was the one who made a mistake back then, so he had to bear the consequences alone. After being the celestial emperor for 1,000 years, he had thought that this supreme position would not make him tired. But in the end, it seemed that he was tired of it. Perhaps if he hadn't wanted this position so badly back then, perhaps he and his master would have had a different ending. Back then, how many people wanted to enter the Fire Phoenix Hall? How many people wanted to take her as their master? However, they were all rejected by her. She only had him as her disciple and no one else. But at that time, for the sake of his position as crown prince, he had actually done such a cruel thing to her. Grand Supreme Lord, your subject is here. Go to the Western Pure Land and seek the Buddha's help. Di Yufan frowned. Don't sacrifice the lives of the Celestials for no reason. Heavenly Emperor, I will personally meet them. Chapter 2158. At the Southern Heavenly Gate, the demons were in a killing frenzy. Yi Xuanji waved his right hand and set up a barrier on the path to the mortal realm. If he didn't do that, the mortal realm would have been destroyed before the heavenly court was damaged. Whoosh whoosh. Just as the immortals and demons were fighting, a golden light flashed. Di Fanyu descended from the sky and stood in front of Yi Xuanji. We meet again. His deep voice rang out slowly, but there was a hint of helplessness in it, as well as an inexplicable sense of guilt. If the Celestial Emperor's memory is correct, you should remember what I said to you on the God-exterminating platform. Luo Qingshun looked at him. Her voice was extremely cold. She didn't understand why someone as arrogant as the original owner would lose to him in the end. However, she had indeed lost. She had lost completely. I remember. Di Fanyu nodded. His gaze was still on her. In the next second, she slowly opened her mouth and said, "There's no need for outsiders to interfere in the matters between the two of us, Master." As soon as he finished speaking, he glanced at Yi Xuanji, who was standing to the side. His eyes were not friendly. Luo Qingqian narrowed her eyes. She said coldly, "I think I know very well who is the outsider. That happened 1,000 years ago. You don't have the right to talk to me about what happened 1,000 years ago." In the next second, Luo Qingqian raised a phoenix dance sword. She looked at him and said, "A life for a life." Silence, silence, silence. The air fell into a deathly stillness, and the soldiers of both sides stopped fighting. Difanyu narrowed his eyes. "Sure." In the next second, he jumped into the air and attacked Luo Qingqian. Black smoke filled the sky. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. The originally bright heavenly palace was now even dimmer than the myriad demon mirror. "Be careful." Yi Xuanji's voice sounded beside her ear. A hint of worry flashed past his deep eyes. She knew that with her current divine power, she should have no problem fighting against Difanyu. However, she was still worried. After all, in a battle between experts, the situation was constantly changing. Difanyu didn't hold back. Every attack was fatal. He missed her, but he wanted to win even more. In fact, he was conflicted. So many years had passed, but he still missed her crazily. When he became the Celestial Emperor, he left the position of consort to her forever, even if it was just a dead person whose primordial spirit had dissipated. He continued to look for people who looked similar to her. Eyes, nose, mouth. As long as there was a similarity, he would try his best to bring them back to the heavenly palace. Perhaps he would never love them for the rest of his life. Perhaps he would not feel the slightest bit wrong, even if they were killed. This was just a thought to keep her by his side. Even if it was just a replacement, he was willing to do so for thousands of years. However, at this very moment, when he was facing off against her sword, he actually didn't want to lose, or rather, he didn't want to die. He knew that she was powerful, but he wished that he could conquer this power. Hiss! With the sound of his wound being torn, Luo Qingqian's phoenix dance sword pierced through his arm. Her eyes were as cold as ice, and there was not the slightest change in her expression. Chapter 21:59. Luo Qingqian froze for a moment. Her thoughts drifted back to 1,000 years ago. "Heavenly Emperor, we are here to save you." Bam! Bam! Several bursts of immortal power attacked Luo Qingqian at the same time, knocking her and Difanyu away. Yi Xuanji narrowed his cold eyes as he stood on the staircase. His right hand gently circled around her as he caught her steadily. Even if he didn't catch her, she could still land safely. He just didn't feel at ease. So the people of the heavenly court don't keep their promises. Yi Xuanji snorted. He waved his right hand, and a black pearl appeared in the air. Soul-absorbing pearl. General Tianlang gasped. He knelt in front of Difanyu and said, "Heavenly Emperor, please leave first. We will definitely stand until the end. But the heavenly court, without Heavenly Emperor, we will never be able to rise again." Difanyu covered his wound. His eyes were filled with unwillingness. He was still not strong enough. If he wasn't strong enough, he wouldn't have been able to protect the heavenly court. "Heavenly Emperor, you can't hesitate anymore." General Tianlang and the other generals all knelt. "All right," Difanyu said with red eyes. "The heavenly court will not forget your sacrifice. No one can leave." In the blink of an eye, Yi Xuanji tossed the soul-absorbing orb into the sky. Streaks of dark red light fell from the sky. Anyone who touched the light would have their primordial spirit destroyed. Those with higher cultivation would be severely injured. The soul-absorbing pearl was a divine weapon of the demons. Yi Xuanji took it out. He was definitely going to win this war. Countless immortals fell in front of her. Blood flowed like a river in the southern heavenly gate. But in the end, Difanyu still escaped. He probably escaped to the Western paradise. Yi Xuanji narrowed his eyes. He waved his right hand and put away the soul-absorbing pearl. "It doesn't matter where he escapes." Luo Qingqian frowned and said, "The Moongazer Serpent's death won't end with his escape." The war continued. Even though the heavenly court was at a disadvantage, they still didn't surrender. They couldn't resist until Yi Xuanji destroyed the primordial spirits of all the immortals. For some reason, she felt like Yi Xuanji had been too calm in this battle. Regardless of whether it was Di Fanyu's escape or the heavenly court's death struggle, he was not moved at all. Perhaps it was because of his personality, or perhaps he was desperately trying to hide something. 7 days later, Yi Xuanji officially took over the heavenly court. The remaining immortals of the heavenly palace were all under house arrest. Yi Xuanji did not kill them. All of this happened too quickly. When she once again stood in front of Fire Phoenix Palace, she was actually in disbelief. It was a brand new palace that had been renovated inside and out, but it was obvious that no one had lived here before. In his memories, this palace had long been destroyed. The only possibility was that Di Fanyu had rebuilt it. Luo Qingshun narrowed her eyes and walked inside. Memories flooded her mind like a tidal wave, crashing against her heart. She could feel that the original owner's love for Di Fanyu was deep and reserved. Di Fanyu's love for her was probably arrogant and selfish. With all these emotions added together, it actually brought them to a dead end. Even so, Luo Qingshun still believed that the original owner was not wrong. Even if she had bravely said the so-called love 1,000 years ago, her ending would still be the same. There would not be any change. Chapter 2160. I owe you my life, but I didn't kill the Moongazer serpent. Yu Bingxin is long gone. She took many god power pills. Be careful. Di Fanyu. The golden light disappeared as quickly as it appeared. This was an ability that all the previous celestial emperors had. It was a tracking spell. Luo Qingshun narrowed her eyes. Her heart trembled. She felt uneasy. Di Fanyu wouldn't lie to her in this situation. She didn't find it strange that someone like Yu Bingxin wanted to kill the Moongazer serpent. But with Yu Bingxin's ability, she shouldn't be able to kill the Moongazer serpent even if she ate 100 god power pills. Could it be that she had helpers? She was a heavenly concubine. How could she have helpers? At this moment, an unexplainable question flashed through her mind. Night fell. The 33 heavens were no longer open. The entire sky looked foggy. It was very annoying. She took 2 jugs of wine and walked towards the Supreme Palace. Yi Xuanji had been dealing with the aftermath in the Heavenly Palace. He hadn't returned to the Myriad Demon's mirror. Actually, she didn't know what his next plan was. Was he going to hand the Heavenly Palace over to a lesser immortal? Or was he going to lead it himself? But in this situation, anyone would want to lead it himself. Bang! As soon as she opened the door, she felt a gust of wind. It was as if someone was moving quickly. It's so late. Why aren't you sleeping? He put down the brush in his hand and looked up at her seriously. Yeah, I'm a bit bored. I wanted to drink with you. Luo Qingshun glanced at the dark sky outside the window. We're about to enter winter. It's the best time to drink. For some reason, even though she'd washed the heavenly palace with blood, she still didn't feel comfortable. Maybe it was because she hadn't killed Di Fanyu with her own hands. Perhaps it was because of the half-truth that Di Fanyu had conveyed to her. Her rationality told her that it was very likely to be true, but her intuition told her that there were countless possibilities. What wine? Drunk peach blossom. I didn't expect a god to know how to make wine. Perhaps you taught me that in another parallel universe. As soon as she finished speaking, she picked up the wine jug and downed it in one gulp. Yi Xuanji sat next to her, his eyes filled with deep indulgence. He always felt that she looked really good when she was drinking, and he would never get tired of looking at her. Even under such circumstances, he was still mesmerized by her appearance. Ding! Affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 90%. I say, Lord Demon God, do you think I'm especially good-looking? Hearing the notification, she curled her lips into a smile with a hint of playfulness in her eyes. After all that had happened, he was still standing firmly by her side. This feeling was really good. Yes, it's very nice. He took a sip of wine and looked at her seriously. He said word by word, You are the most beautiful woman in the 3 realms. You're really good at flirting. I'm serious. So, if you had to choose between the 3 realms and me, which one would you choose? He froze for a moment, as if he was about to blurt out an answer, but he swallowed it back. He looked at her and said, "These two seem to be things that I already have." Shameless. Luo Qingqian snorted and looked at him with slightly blurred eyes. "When did I say that I was yours?" "I don't think so." Yishuanji gently patted her head and replied with a pampering look, "But I think so in my heart." Chapter 2161. Luo Qingqian never thought that she would be able to talk to Yishuanji all night in the Heavenly Palace. Actually, the moment she opened the door, she saw that person. Even though she only saw the back of that person, she knew who it was. "So, after everything here is taken care of, will you marry me?" Luo Qingqian chuckled softly. A complicated look flashed through her eyes. She couldn't explain it clearly and couldn't understand it. After an unknown amount of time, Yishuanji finally looked at her and said softly, "When everything is settled, I will. You don't have to answer me yet. I have to go somewhere tomorrow." Luo Qingqian raised her right hand and sealed his lips with her fingertips. "When I come back, can you tell me the answer?" Yishuanji's body involuntarily froze. He looked at her clear eyes and felt an inexplicable pain in his heart. The air around them fell silent. Tiny snowflakes floated in from outside the window and landed on her long hair. He slowly raised his hand and gently removed the snowflakes from her hair. Closing his eyes, he planted a kiss between her brows and said, "Okay, then I'll go to sleep first." She pursed her lips and smiled. Putting down the wine jar, she waved at him and said, "Tomorrow, I must hear your answer." She took 2 steps back. Her nose twitched, and she almost cried. Yishuanji just looked at her like this and didn't say anything else. She took 2 steps and then turned back. She took 2 steps and then turned back again. Some people clearly knew that they could end things here. They could pretend that they didn't see anything and that nothing had happened. But she wanted so badly to know the truth. The unbounded land. The mirror of reincarnation. Once upon a time, Yishuanji saw what happened to her in the heavenly palace through this mirror. This was a mirror that only a god could open. She took a deep breath. Her brows trembled as she prayed silently in her heart. "It wasn't him, it wasn't him, it wasn't him." Hiss, a familiar celestial power, suddenly appeared around her. But the moment she opened her eyes, the celestial power instantly disappeared. "Plenilune, is that you?" Her voice trembled slightly as she bit her lip and said, "Do you want me to see the truth?" She could clearly feel that this was the moon gazer serpent's divine power. Although it was very weak, it was indeed his. The next second, her right hand shook gently, and the golden shimmer lingered in front of the reincarnation mirror. After a while, the star velvet flower sea where the moon gazer serpent lived appeared. The youth was dressed in black, and beside him stood a red-haired, purple-lipped young girl. They worked together to kill the moon gazer serpent while it was unprepared. The scene changed. It was a small wooden house in Ji City. Ning, and Xiaolang were having dinner in the house. Suddenly, a black wind blew past, and a huge divine power tore their bodies apart. Blood dyed the entire wooden house red, and it was bloody. The young man slowly turned around. His face was cold and proud, and his eyes were bottomless. He was none other than Yishuanji, who she had been drinking with at level 33 last night. "I don't believe it." She took a deep breath as crystal-clear tears fell down drop by drop. But no matter how much she didn't believe it, she had seen Yu Bingxin with her own eyes in the Supreme Palace. Even though Yu Bingxin had become neither human nor ghost, she could still see her at a glance. It turned out that this had been a trap from beginning to end. It turned out that everything Yishuanji had done was just to make her accompany him in slaughtering the heavenly palace. Chapter 2162. By the time she returned to the 33rd heaven, Yishuanji had already left, and the heavenly court was temporarily under Yu Bingxin's control. Luo Qingqian would never forget Yu Bingxin's eyes. They were the eyes of a victor. Even though her spirit had already fallen into the demonic path, she was still elated to defeat her. What god? What demon? As long as she could defeat Luo Qingqian, she didn't care even if she had to become the ugliest demon. Fire god. Yu Bingxin swayed her hips as she walked over step by step. Her heavily made-up face had a smug smile as she looked at her. Is this game fun? Clang. Luo Qingshun raised the phoenix dance sword without a word. Her clear eyes darkened and filled with murderous intent. What were you doing? Yu Bingxin was taken aback. Her smug expression instantly turned pale. She was indeed too excited and didn't know that she was in danger. But no matter what, she was still Yi Xuanji's partner. It didn't matter how much Luo Qingshun hated her. After all, the current 3 realms belonged to Yi Xuanji. It was the 3 realms that he ruled. Since you've delivered yourself to my doorstep, why shouldn't I take it? The phoenix dance sword slashed her neck and blood dripped down. She wanted to resist, but found herself surrounded by layers of golden light and couldn't move at all. Don't do anything rash. I have an agreement with the demon god. I opened the north, south, and east heaven gates and allowed the demonic army to enter directly. I am a meritorious subject of the myriad demons' mirror. Meritorious subject? Luo Qingshun shrugged. Who do you think will save you? Luo Qingshun, you can't swish. Swish. She narrowed her eyes and raised her right hand. 2 golden lights flashed in front of Yu Bingxin's eyes. In an instant, Yu Bingxin's eyeballs were dug out and blood splattered everywhere. Ah! Yu Bingxin screamed and fell to the ground. Is it fun? Luo Qingshun's lips curled into an extremely cold smile, and the haze in her eyes seemed to freeze everyone around her. You can't kill me. You can't kill me. Yu Bingxin's voice was trembling. She had lost her eyes and was now in complete darkness. At this moment, she felt boundless fear. How could this be? Not long ago, Yi Xuanji had handed the entire heavenly court over to her to deal with the aftermath. In that instant, she suddenly felt her own value. But why did it suddenly become like this in the blink of an eye? Of course I can't kill you so quickly. Luo Qingshun bit her lips and said, 1,000 years ago, you hurt me. Today, I'll pay you back. As soon as she finished speaking, she threw the phoenix dance sword into the air, and a row of sword formations instantly appeared in the sky. It was as if a god was about to be killed. Luo Qingshun, I'm gone. Pooh! Ah! Blade after blade of sword light pierced her body and penetrated her primordial spirit. The golden light around her body dispersed bit by bit. That was not her own cultivation, but the increase in her cultivation after eating the pill. Luo, I won't let you go. Bang! Under the powerful sword formation, Yu Bingxin's body exploded and her primordial spirit turned into nothingness. Immortals and gods were different. A mere exalted immortal wouldn't be able to piece together their primordial spirit, no matter how long it took. Luo Qingshun wanted her to die this time. She would disappear from this world forever, never having a chance to rise again. Chapter 2163. The Star Velvet Flower Sea. The place where the moon-gazer serpent had lived for thousands of years was also the place where he was buried. Standing in front of the empty grave, she frowned and waved her right hand gently. The door to the tombstone opened. She always felt that the aura left behind by the moon-gazer serpent was not a living thing, but it did come from the moon-gazer serpent. Because the primordial spirit of a god was scattered between heaven and earth after it dissipated, it was different from mortals. It would leave a corpse for future generations to mourn. As a god, it was even more lonely. If it died, it would disappear from this world forever. She was very lucky. The moon-gazer serpent saved her and half of Yi Xuanji's divine power. It took thousands of years to reassemble her primordial spirit. But the moon-gazer serpent, she knew that it could not come back. Hiss! Just as she was lost in thought, a golden light flashed in front of her eyes. The aura from the moon-gazer serpent grew stronger. The next second, a water mirror appeared in front of her, and the moon-gazer serpent appeared on it. Don't be afraid. Make the decision you think is right. Don't let the 3 realms perish like this. Whoosh! A black fog flashed in front of her. The water mirror disappeared instantly, and the moon-gazer serpent also disappeared. She didn't turn around, but she knew who was standing behind her. He came quite quickly. Qingshun, there are some things you don't have to worry about. His voice was very deep and seemed to be mixed with countless complicated emotions. It was hard to understand. Luo Qingshun took a deep breath and slowly turned around. She looked at him seriously with a pair of beautiful eyes and said, "If you say it wasn't you, I will believe you. It was me." He did not deny it. His deep eyes were calm. There was no confession, no apology, and no regret. It was probably because everything he did was inevitable. Or maybe he had planned to unify the three realms a long time ago. He was just following the plan and carrying it out step by step. Why? Luo Qingshun took a deep breath. Her right hand clenched into a fist and then slowly relaxed. Even if you wanted to unify the three realms, why did you kill the Moongazer serpent? Because you wanted to help me. Yi Xuanji looked at her calmly and gave her an answer. Even if you don't kill the Moongazer serpent, I will still help you. Luo Qingshun pulled out her phoenix dance sword and looked at him. But you didn't even let Ning, and Xiaolang off. Only endless hatred can stimulate a person's full power. Yi Xuanji raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at her. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been able to take down Southern Sky Gate. Stop talking. She roared, causing the entire empty tomb to shake violently. The snowflakes at the door drifted in with the cold wind and landed on her hair. His shoulder, his sword, but this time Yi Xuanji didn't walk over. He looked at her gently and helped her remove the snowflakes. He stared at her blankly, as if he was using all the strength in his life to remember her appearance. All right, if you're willing to rule over the three realms with me, the position by my side will always be, he said with narrowed eyes. If you're willing to rule over the three realms with me, the position by my side will always, you know that's impossible. Luo Qingshun bit her lip and smiled bleakly. Actually, I really want to agree. I also really want to hear the answer. That day, they had toasted each other. He didn't say the answer, but a person had to live up to their conscience. Chapter 2164. Then what do you want? Yi Xuanji looked at her and chuckled. You can't kill me. His voice was very cold to the bone. But for some reason, she could see an inexplicable sadness and reluctance in his deep eyes. Time seemed to freeze at this moment. Luo Qingshun looked at him and didn't speak for a long time. It wasn't that she didn't know what to say, but she was making a decision that went against morality, and this decision was destined to make her uneasy for the rest of her life. You will lead the three realms well, right? Luo Qingshun bit her lip and looked at him with no confidence when she said this. Of course. Yi Xuanji froze for a moment, but still responded seriously. You're right. I can't beat you anyway. Luo Qingshun shrugged and looked at him with red eyes. I already killed Yu Bingxin. Just take it as self-consolation that I already got my revenge. At this moment, she felt that she had suddenly become extremely weak. When the naked truth was in front of her eyes, she was still looking for excuses for Yi Xuanji. She hoped so much that it wasn't him, even if there was so much naked evidence in front of her. As long as he said no, she would still believe him. But he admitted it without hesitation. But even if she admitted it, she couldn't kill him. On the way here, she kept telling herself that she must be an upright person and that she must avenge the Moongazer serpent and Ning. But the moment she saw Yi Xuanji, she knew that there were some things she couldn't do. For example, kill him. No matter who won or lost, no matter if she had the ability to kill him or not, she couldn't do it. Yi Xuanji looked at her tightly shut eyes and worried expression. He couldn't help but raise his right hand and then slowly put it down. He furrowed his brows tightly, making his eyes look even more cold and detached. So, you forgive me, right? He looked at her coldly and said, Forgive me for killing Ning, darling Xiao, and the Moongazer serpent for my own benefit, right? Stop talking. Luo Qingshun covered her ears and shook her head. I won't forgive you, but I won't kill you. I don't want the answer, and I won't rule the three realms with you. Since the three realms is something you desire so much to obtain, I don't think you're willing to share it with others. As soon as her voice fell, she turned around to look at the Plenaloon's coffin. Inside was the immortal robe he often wore, covered in flower petals. Once upon a time, the Moongazer serpent had told her that if he returned to the primal chaos, they would use such a ceremony to bid farewell. She never thought that she would be able to witness such a farewell with her own eyes. Yi Xuanji didn't say anything. He just watched as she brushed past him. He watched as she tried her best to control her emotions and not let her tears fall. In fact, he loved her more than anyone else in this world, but there were many things that he could no longer do. Just 3 seconds after she brushed past him, Yi Xuanji gently lifted his right hand, and a dark blue barrier blocked her path. Snow swirled around them, and the air was filled with a murderous aura. He summoned his black sword and pulled it out of the scabbard. He faced her back and said, "You're right. I worked so hard to obtain it. So how can I let anyone who can threaten it exist in this world?" Chapter 2165. She didn't know how much time had passed, but when hundreds of snowflakes landed on her long eyelashes, she finally came back to her senses. She slowly turned around and looked at him. "You want to kill me?" She looked at him in disbelief, her heart pounding uncontrollably. Impossible, impossible, impossible. At this moment, she started to doubt her favorability. Why did Yi Xuanji still want to kill her when she had 90% favorability? "I'm sorry, Qingchen." His eyes trembled, and a light flashed in his eyes. He said softly, "I've planned so much just for this one thing. Help me." As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his sword and instantly attacked in her direction. Before she could even react, he was already in front of her. Luo Qingchen was stunned. She jumped back and summoned her Fengwu sword to block his attack. At this moment, her mind was blank. Why? She asked the question 3 times in her heart, and her eyes were filled with endless despair. Yi Xuanji didn't hold back at all. Every attack was fatal. If she hadn't experienced the tempering of the soul-devouring pagoda, or if she wasn't an exalted god, she wouldn't have been able to dodge Yi Xuanji's attack. Yi Xuanji, in the midst of the battle, she shouted with all her might, "I don't care about your 3 realms. Let me go." Suddenly, she missed the chaos space. She felt wronged and wronged. At this moment, she didn't even have the extravagant hope of completing any mission. Even if her favorability was reduced to 0, it wouldn't affect her at all. She just wanted to escape from such a battle. Unfortunately, Yi Xuanji didn't give her such a chance. Clang! Clang! The Fengwu sword and Yi Xuanji's sword clashed in the air. Luo Qingchen used her extremely tight hands to block Yi Xuanji's fatal attacks again and again, until a small mistake, and Yi Xuanji's sword pierced through her shoulder. The air was instantly filled with the smell of blood. Fresh blood dripped down drop by drop, landing on her snow-white clothes and the white snowy ground. Yi Xuanji frowned deeply. He pulled his right hand back and pulled out his sword. Luo Qingchen took 2 steps back, her face instantly pale. She leapt to the side and quickly raised her Phoenix Dance sword to attack. Because if she didn't change her strategy, she would definitely die in Yi Xuanji's hands soon. Little did he know that when they entered the duel again, Luo Qingchen's attack, which was not fatal at all, deviated from the path. Or rather, it wasn't that her sword had deviated from its path, but that Yi Xuanji had suddenly appeared in front of the sword. In a battle between experts, the speed was extremely fast. The moment she wanted to pull back the Phoenix Dance sword, Yi Xuanji gripped the blade tightly in his hand and stabbed it towards his heart. Qingchen only felt a buzzing sound in her head, and her whole body couldn't stop trembling. He slowly moved away from her lips and gently brushed his left hand over her shoulder. The wound that had pierced through her body instantly healed. His right hand gently let go of her waist and covered her eyes. His slightly cold voice carried endless gentleness as he said, "Don't be afraid. It will end soon." Chapter 2166. Actually, the first time he spoke to her, he had already guessed that he would fall in love with her. However, he hadn't guessed the ending between them. The originally dark and gloomy sky became bright and clear at this moment, as if it was transparent and pale. Yi Xuanji, who was standing in front of her, was emitting a faint black glow. Luo Qingchen knew that it was his primordial spirit. Just why? She almost roared out. Her hands didn't even have the strength to hold the Fengwu sword. However, at this moment, Yi Xuanji's expression was calm. His originally dark eyes were no longer bottomless. It was as if he had finally put down a large stone in his heart. "I'm sorry, Qingshun." He gently raised his right hand and wiped away her gently falling tears. His eyes were filled with adoration as he looked at her. This is the only ending. To Yi Xuanji, he had no other choice. He couldn't let her die, so he didn't need to make a choice that even the plenilune serpent would have a headache over. Pure white snowflakes fell one by one, gently fanning her long eyelashes. "I don't understand." Luo Qingshun tightly held Yi Xuanji's hand in fear. She was afraid that if she let go, he would have a chance to disappear from this world. At this moment, her brain seemed to stop working. All that was left was a blank and an indescribable fear. She seemed to know the ending, but she wasn't willing to accept or believe it. "Be good." Yi Xuanji raised his hand with some difficulty and gently patted her head. He looked at the spot between her brows. The faintly discernible spider lilies were so beautiful. How he wished that he could always be by her side, even if he was just a normal person. However, there were some things that he couldn't allow. He closed his eyes and gently placed a kiss between her brows. He wanted to seal the happiness that he hadn't had yet and the story that he hadn't finished with a kiss. Ding! Affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 100%. Yi Xuanji. Luo Qingshun almost shouted his name again and again, but it was no use at all. With a bang, an extremely strong white light flashed, and she felt that the two hands that were tightly clenched disappeared in an instant. Pieces of Yuan Shan drifted in the air and merged with the pure white snow. Both the Fengwu sword and the Xian sword fell to the ground. The entire land seemed to have sunk into silence the moment he left. She stood there in a daze, unable to say a word as she choked up. She could only let her tears fall down drop by drop, falling on the snowy ground, falling on her heart. Those unsolved mysteries seemed to be unimportant at this moment. The justice that she believed in had completely collapsed at this moment. What devil, what God, what life and death, she had no idea what he was trying so hard to do. It was as if she was just a spectator, standing in an ignorant position, watching the ups and downs of things, watching the passing of time, waiting for the ending written by others. Among them, other than the unsolvable mysteries, there were also the scams of everyone. The snow was very heavy, almost blurring her eyes. Not far away, 3 figures slowly walked over. They were the people that had filled her with guilt. They walked towards her step by step and appeared in front of her. So this really was a trap. The person trapped in this trap wasn't a god, a devil, or the 3 realms. It was her, only her. Chapter 2167. The Moongazer serpent didn't die, Ninger didn't die, Xiaolang didn't die. Everyone she treasured, he also treasured with his life, except for himself. The story was very short and could be summarized in just a few times. Of course, when this extremely short story came from the Moongazer serpent's mouth, it still took her an entire year to come back to her senses. When she stood in the sea of star velvet flowers again, there was a glassy, empty tomb that the Moongazer serpent had personally built. There was only his profound sword and his favorite black clothes inside. It's been a year. Are you desperately trying to condense your primordial spirit, or have you already returned to the primordial chaos? Luo Qingshun looked up and smiled bitterly. Will you come back? Snowflakes fluttered down. She opened her hand, and the fine white snow fell on her palm, slightly cold to the heart. She closed her eyes. On this day that he had left her for a year, she recalled the past. Actually, when she came out of the soul-devouring pagoda, when Yi Xuanji reached out to touch her, he knew that only one of them could live. Shun power was something that belonged to someone. When the owner of the Shun power was completely asleep, it would belong to the person with the Shun power. However, if the owner of the Shun power was awake, then the Shun power would gather towards the complete Shun power that belonged to the owner. Back then, when Yi Xuanji gave half of his Shun power to Luo Qingshun, he fell into a long sleep. Because the original owner of the Shun power had fallen into a long sleep, Half of the Shun power naturally belonged to Luo Qingchen. However, when Yi Xuanji awakened with his soul, half of the Shun power in Luo Qingchen's body would continuously gather towards the owner. That day, yellow sand filled the sky. When he saw her covered in blood, his eyes were filled with pain. But when he approached her and wanted to hug her, he found that his palms were unknowingly emitting a dark red light, absorbing her divine power bit by bit in a completely defenseless situation. He immediately panicked. She retracted her hands abruptly and stopped in midair as she tried to hug him. She smiled and said, "I thought you would hug me." I said in my heart, "I really want to hug you." The story after that was even shorter, but it was still so resolute. After he brought her back to the myriad demons' mirror, he found an excuse to descend to the mortal world. In fact, he went to the Star Velvet Flower Sea to look for the Plenilune Serpent. At that time, Moongazer had just settled Ning, and Xiaolang back to the Star Velvet Flower Sea. Although Di Fanyu was furious, the Moongazer Serpent was a high god after all. There was nothing he could do. The Moongazer Serpent saw him in such a hurry and chuckled. "I rarely see you like this. What's wrong? Did you encounter a problem?" Yi Xuanji told the Full Moon Serpent about the godly power. The Full Moon Serpent frowned and opened the holy book of the heavenly court. There were records about the divine power of gods, and one of them wrote that if a primordial spirit was pieced together with the divine power of others, the divine power would belong to the other person if the other person woke up. He wouldn't lose them all at once, but bit by bit. Apart from the occasional palpitations, the person who lost it did not have any other reaction. This feeling of palpitations would become more and more frequent until the divine power was completely taken back by its original owner. She would die. No matter if she was a god or a human, she would die. Back then, her primordial spirit was reunited because of that half of the Shun power. If she lost it, her primordial spirit would scatter again. Chapter 2168. The Moongazer Serpent sighed helplessly. "I didn't expect that you would risk your lives to awaken the other." One used half of his primordial spirit, while the other risked everything to seize the spirit. But in the end, only one can live. Yi Xuanji's voice was extremely calm. He didn't seem to be conflicted about the choice at all. There was only reluctance in his eyes. A deep reluctance. "It seems that you already have an answer." The Moongazer Serpent looked at his calm eyes and suddenly felt that this youth who never cared about life and death and always sought defeat in his own field had changed. "There's no need to make a choice at all." He shrugged. There was a faint light in his beautiful eyes. He said softly, "I'm just thinking about how to complete this without letting her know." She was so smart. Sometimes she could understand everything with just a small look. It's recorded in the holy book that if you want the divine power to no longer belong to the original owner, the later owner must personally kill the original owner. The Moongazer Serpent waved his right hand, and the holy book slowly closed. He patted Yi Xuanji's shoulder gently. "You should have seen it already." He responded faintly. His beautiful eyes flickered slightly. The holy book of the heavenly court recorded it very clearly. "What do you plan to do?" The Moongazer Serpent's voice slowly rang out and interrupted his thoughts. However, he probably already thought of a way. "Let's put on a show. I'll write the story that belongs to me and her." "Xuanji, Moongazer Serpent, you're my best friend. You're also her best friend." Yi Xuanji paused. "But she's the person I love the most." The Moongazer Serpent froze in place when he heard this. He never thought that Yi Xuanji would say something like this in his lifetime. A demon god, a god who could take away countless lives with a gentle wave of his hand. He didn't hesitate at all when it came to choosing between the life of the person he loved and his own life. "She's so smart. It won't be easy to trick her." The Moongazer Serpent shook his head gently. That's why I need your help." Yi Xuanji narrowed his eyes. "And Ning, and Darling Xiao." This so-called script written by Yi Xuanji had been rewritten bit by bit ever since he returned from the Moongazer Serpent's Star Roan flower language. Except, he brought her to the human world. Mochizuki had once asked him why he wanted to bring her to the human world. He said, "I want to leave her a beautiful memory." Perhaps the human world was the most real place. They spent the Chishi festival together. In fact, the story of the cowherd and the weaver girl was not as beautiful as it appeared to the world. Everyone in the heavenly court knew that in the long years that followed, they were tired of waiting and had forgotten each other in the deepest part of their hearts. Even so, the Milky Way still prevented them from meeting. But mortals always believed that they would love each other forever. The moon-gazer serpent said that Yishuanji had told him that the time in the human world was the most unforgettable time in his life. They passed through ordinary streets and alleys. They watched a moving story. Actually, he had deliberately brought her to read the story. He had seen this play the last time he went to the mortal world. He felt that the story of the little fox and the god of war was very similar to theirs in some ways. Chapter 2169. Unknowingly, it has been a year. The voice of the moon-gazer serpent came from behind. She quickly raised her hand to wipe away the tears on her cheeks, closed her eyes, and said softly, "Yes, you finally came out of the house." The moon-gazer serpent patted Luo Qingqin's shoulder gently, just like it patted Yi Xuanji's shoulder in the past. It said to her like an elder, "He wouldn't want to see you like this." "Then what kind of me does he want to see?" Luo Qingqin raised her eyes, and there was a touch of bleakness in her clear eyes. She said with self-mockery, "Doesn't he know how selfish he is? He selfishly left her alone in this world. He selfishly directed and acted in a play, making everything seem to have a perfect ending. He gave her an ending, but it was such a heart-wrenching ending. He may be more confused than anyone else." The moon-gazer serpent interrupted itself before it finished its words. It shook its head helplessly and said, "Or he may not be confused at all, because he already had an answer from the beginning. He just followed the answer in his heart to complete the story of you and him step by step. Would you like a drink?" Luo Qingqin shrugged and put a bunch of red spider lilies that had just been picked in the sea of star velvet flowers on the snow monument. Then she turned to look at the moon-gazer serpent and said, "I suddenly want to listen to the story he wrote at that time again." The moon-gazer serpent was stunned for a moment. Looking at the shallow tears in her eyes, it nodded gently and said, "Okay." The moon was bright and the stars were sparse. The night in the sea of star velvet flowers was always particularly beautiful. Luo Qingqin poured the wine in the wine pot into the moonlight cup. She took a sip and looked at him, saying, "Weren't you afraid that I would find out the story you wrote at that time?" "Yes, yes, yes." The moon-gazer serpent drank 2 more cups and looked a little excited, as if it was recalling the old script. It said slowly, "Do you still remember? At that time, when you went to the reincarnation mirror in the unbounded land to confirm the process, I immediately went to the unbounded land." When Luo Qingqin heard the words, she was stunned for a moment, and her eyes instantly turned red. She felt as if the past kept replaying in front of her eyes. Scene after scene, it was like switching scenes. It was heart-wrenching. "So it was true that I sensed your existence in front of the reincarnation mirror?" She suddenly felt that she had a chance to get close to the truth, but she was just one step away. "It's true." Moon-gazer serpent sighed softly and said, "At that time, the reincarnation mirror was actually set up by me. What you saw was just the picture I wanted you to see." "Mochizuki, aren't you afraid that I will hate you?" Luo Qingqin glanced sideways, her clear eyes filled with tears. "One day, when you realize that all the hatred and love you have experienced are all part of someone else's script, you will realize how helpless you are." But she couldn't hate him because everything he did was so that she could live. How could she hate him? "No matter which one of you, I'll be very sad if I die." The moon-gazer serpent bitterly smiled and said, "But Xianji has already made his choice. What can I do? Isn't he afraid that I will hate him?" She seemed to have drunk too much, and tears fell down drop by drop. In fact, she didn't drink too much. She just wanted to be drunk in this lonely world and never wake up. "So do you hate him?" the moon-gazer serpent asked. Silence, 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 dead silence. Chapter 2170. White snowflakes suddenly fell from the sky and landed on her hair one by one. She suddenly recalled the time when he had gently removed the white snowflakes from her hair and then held her in his arms. She seemed to have forgotten a lot of things in the past. She didn't know what she was waiting for. Perhaps she was waiting for a miracle or an explanation. The heavenly court and myriad demon mirror returned to normal. The moon gazer serpent saw that she didn't seem to care about anything and sighed. "Why don't you take a walk in the mortal realm?" She thought for a long time and slowly said, "That's fine." Returning to G City once again was a very sad feeling for her. She felt like Yi Xuanji had come here with the same feelings last time. Thinking about it later, it was probably a farewell. The mortal realm was like a day for thousands of years. It hadn't changed at all compared to last year. Selling Tongholu, good quality rouge. "Miss, do you want to take a look? This is a new tribute from the western regions." Take a look, take a look." Luo Qingxuan stood in the middle of the heavy traffic. She closed her eyes and felt that Yi Xuanji was still beside her. Her heart ached slightly. Suddenly, a little boy gently tugged on her sleeve. Luo Qingxuan froze and slowly lowered her head. He opened his palm and said, "Sister, someone told me to give this to you." There was a blood-red jade pendant in his palm. The word moon was faintly imprinted on the jade pendant. Luo Qingxuan frowned. When she reached out to touch the jade pendant, she instantly felt a powerful force that completely swallowed her. She froze and suddenly withdrew her right hand. The blood-red jade pendant fell to the ground with a thud and turned into a pool of blood. "How is that possible?" she muttered. Then she left the mortal realm and went to the star velvet flower language. The moon gazer serpent brewed a pot of tea and slowly closed the holy book. He frowned. "It is indeed the demons from the crack. I can feel that they are very powerful." Luo Qingxuan's eyes trembled, and a trace of worry flashed through her eyes. The crack is actually at the border of the wild desolate. It's similar to the soul-devouring tower and belongs to another space. The moon gazer serpent took a sip of tea and said with a serious expression, "If I'm not wrong, you being Sheen, right?" Luo Qingxuan nodded slightly, her gaze heavy. "Yes." The moon gazer serpent frowned and said, "Generally speaking, cracks don't appear, but there is a kind of power that is compatible with it." "What?" "God power pill." After listening to Mochizuki, Luo Qingxuan roughly understood. Yu Bingxin had returned with a different identity. Then the crevasse, bang. Before Luo Qingxuan finished speaking, a huge mushroom cloud appeared in the sky. It was bright red and filled with killing intent. "Oh no, something has happened in the mortal world." Luo Qingxuan closed her eyes and quickly followed the moon gazer serpent to the extreme city. If she wasn't sure that this was the location of the extreme city, she wouldn't believe that such a lively city in the morning would be barren in the afternoon. Not to mention people, even the houses were turned into dust and no longer existed. The residual power here is very strong. I have to return to the heavenly court. The moon gazer serpent looked at her and said, "Go to the myriad demons' mirror. This time, the gods and demons will have to work together to resist the enemy." Luo Qingxuan didn't say anything. Her clear eyes were a bit blurred. Qingxuan, Chapter 2171. Her voice was a little choked up, and as she spoke, the rims of her eyes unconsciously turned red. She didn't want to do this, but she couldn't control herself. Qingxuan. The moon gazer serpent tightly held her shoulder as it looked at her. The cracked land isn't as simple as you think. The demons inside are different from the demons in the 10,000 demon mirror. They exist by sucking energy. Luo Qingxuan didn't respond. The moon gazer serpent continued. They grow 100 times faster than ordinary demons. The heavenly tomes recorded that tens of thousands of years ago, the fissure was opened once. At that time, both demons and gods perished in the world. Luo Qingxuan still didn't respond. "Qingxuan, I know." She responded faintly and covered her eyes with her hands. She took a deep breath and said, "Actually, this is good to what? Finally, I have a reason to die." Actually, she should have left long ago. In this dimension where Yi Xuanji didn't exist, becoming a god, and living a long life where every day felt like a year was torturous. The moon-gazer serpent didn't know how to respond after hearing her words. He could only see despair in her soul-stirring eyes, a deathly stillness of despair. She never thought that she would become the savior of this world. She only knew that when she returned to the myriad demons' mirror, all the demons were still very friendly to her. Xianming even came out to welcome her. He looked at her and said, "Long time no see. It's only been a year." She nodded faintly and smiled. "But it feels like a long time." The moment she saw Xianming, she suddenly felt like a lifetime had passed. She felt that he had matured a lot after Yishuanji left. Or more accurately, it should be said that he was old. "I thought that you would come back to the 10,000 demon mirror. After all, you were once the demon lord." He paused when he said this. He looked into Luo Qingchen's misted eyes and didn't say anything else. "I didn't dare to come back. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to hold back and cry." Luo Qingchen nodded slightly. Looking at the exquisite fortress palace, she said with red eyes, "After all, he has always liked his fortress. I wonder why Flower Goddess is here this time." Xianming saw that she was very sad and immediately changed the topic. Luo Qingchen's eyebrows twitched slightly. She regained her senses and said, "Demons have appeared in the cracked land. You should know about this." Xianming nodded and said, "Yes, we can sense it. I heard that they went to the mortal world first." "Yes," Luo Qingchen replied. "They massacred Extreme City." Although he didn't know why they were doing this, it was fortunate that Ning and Xiao Lang had already traveled the world a year ago. Otherwise, this time, terrifying indeed. Xianming frowned as a gleam of worry crossed his eyes. "Judging from your expression, you know about the Earth Demon in the crevice? The myriad demons' mirror definitely knows more about the spatial crack than the heavenly court." Xianming thought for a while and said, "Flower God, please come with me. I can show you the scripture stored in the myriad demons' mirror." "Okay." Luo Qingchen nodded and said, "The moon-gazer serpent doesn't know much about the demon in that place. However, with the current strength of the heavenly court, they shouldn't be able to resist it." When Xianming heard this, he suddenly stopped. He turned around and looked at her. "Flower Goddess, if you need the myriad demons' mirror, all of us will listen to your orders." Chapter 2172. Actually, if Xianming hadn't said this, she wouldn't have thought of Yishuanji. But he said it, and it made her feel sad. The sadness that came from the depths of her heart. Xianming did no more about the demon realm than the moon-gazer serpent. Simply put, the demon realm was a spatial boundary created by a huge fission. In other words, it was a place more terrifying than the soul-devouring pagoda. The demon realm in the demon realm was fundamentally different from the demon realm in the myriad demons' mirror. They lived by sucking and kept getting stronger. All the energy, all the power, all the cultivation, they could absorb it all through their own magic power and convert it into their own power. When people die, they can become ghosts. When gods or demons die, if they don't return to the chaos, they will wander around the demon realm. Xianming gave a simple summary. Perhaps some evil aura has swallowed it, and it has a new life. Luo Qingchen fell in a deep thought. After a long time, she frowned and said, "I heard from the moon-gazer serpent that there was a record in the heavenly court's holy book. Tens of thousands of years ago, the demon realm was suddenly opened. How was it solved?" Xianming was startled. His expression was complicated. He wanted to say something, but when the words came to his mouth, he swallowed them back. The heavenly Tao dictates that when the crack appears, there will definitely be a demon god in this world. Xianming opened a page of the ancient book and handed it to her. Last time, all the demons in the demon realm were sealed by the demon god of the myriad demons' mirror. Because the heavenly court was destroyed, they didn't know the result. No wonder. Luo Qingchen narrowed her eyes and murmured, "The heavenly court's holy book about this is so simple." "Yes." Xianming put the ancient book back and looked at her. "Flower Goddess, what do you want us to do? Just tell us." Luo Qingchen thought for a while and asked, "They attack from the mortal realm. They must be afraid of the myriad demon's mirror. After all, the myriad demon's mirror is the furthest away from the mortal realm. Of course, the demon god is stronger than everything in the world. When Xianming said this, his eyes flashed with a faint light. His tone was very proud, as if he was born in the myriad demon's mirror. Gather the entire devil army. We will make a trip to the heavenly court. Luo Qingchun half squinted her eyes, her right hand habitually tapping on the wooden table at the side. After they are done massacring the mortal world, they will definitely go to the heavenly court. Now, they probably couldn't save those people in the mortal realm. At the very least, they had to protect the heavenly court this time. Got it. I'll arrange it now. Xianming bowed to her respectfully and quickly left to prepare. Luo Qingchen nodded slightly and looked at the place where he used to live. She murmured, I will definitely protect your myriad demon's mirror for you. I will make sure that this battle ends in the heavenly court. Those things that he couldn't do, she, who had his complete divine power, would definitely help him do it. However, what Luo Qingchen didn't expect was that the devils in the cracked land would come faster than she thought. It only took them 3 days to wipe out the entire human world. The bustling market, the peddlers peddling their wares, and the simple mortals had all disappeared. The vast mortal realm was only covered by yellow sand. It was so desolate, and that group of unharmed devils arrived at the heavenly court on the 4th day. She couldn't be more familiar with the leader. Chapter 2173. She was dressed in black armor, her long hair draped over her shoulders, and black demonic chi radiated from her body. Her face looked illusory, and her eyes were filled with black blood. There was no white in her eyes at all. It was very strange. Purplish red lips, blood red skin, and those bright red fangs. She didn't seem like a single person, but more like an amalgamation of countless devil chi and her primordial spirit that was scattered in the crevice. However, her voice didn't change. It was still sharp and ear-piercing. I didn't think I'd come back again. Her lips curled up into a strange smile. She looked at Luo Qingchun and laughed. Ha, did you know? When I knew I could come back, I was so excited. Everyone raised their guard and looked at this neither human nor noble person in front of them. They didn't recognize who was standing in front of them until a maid-like fairy exclaimed, Ah, you, heavenly lady you? At that moment, everyone sucked in a cold breath. Their eyes widened as they looked at Yu Bingxin in disbelief. A golden light slowly descended from the sky, and another familiar figure appeared in front of her. When she saw Di Fanyu again, there were no ripples in her eyes. There was no anger, no hatred. Perhaps to her, the current Di Fanyu was just a heavenly emperor and nothing else. However, the moment Di Fanyu appeared, his eyes landed on Luo Qingchun without hesitation. His face looked a bit old. It was probably because this year in the Western world had allowed him to calm down and think about many things. At the same time, Yu Bingxin spoke again. Why don't you look at me? Her voice was a bit desolate. There was an inexplicable emptiness in the desolation. She covered her heart with her blood-red hand and said, 1,000 years ago, I was just a substitute, right? Have you never loved me? Di Fanyu frowned slightly. He calmed down and recognized the woman in front of him. He was a bit surprised. Then a trace of disgust appeared on his face. Yes. These 2 simple words hurt Yu Bingxin more than 1,000 words. Once upon a time, she had worked so hard to walk to her side. She had done so many things so that she would not become a substitute. But what happened in the end? Why was her ending so miserable? What did she do wrong? Ha. In the next second, she laughed maniacally. She looked at Di Fanyu and said, Your answer is really disappointing, but it doesn't matter. Soon, everything here will be over. With just you. Luo Qingchun's cold eyes narrowed as her right hand transformed into the phoenix dance sword, her eyes filled with killing intent. Shut up. Yu Bingxin roared and glared at her. It's all because of you, all because of you. Today, I will tear you to shreds. I will tear you to shreds. As soon as Yu Bingxin's voice fell, all the devils standing behind her attacked Luo Qingchun. The originally white and blue sky dimmed in an instant. The air was filled with an austere aura. Luo Qingxun coldly snorted. She suddenly pulled back her right hand and threw the exquisite ring into the sky. A golden light scattered down,